Hey everyone. Welcome to the darkness. To that realm where nightmares and reality blur into something far more terrifying than either alone. Tonight we're sinking into the most bone-chilling, mind-bending mysteries that lurk beneath the waves of our planet's oceans. From colossal creatures that defy scientific explanation to ghostly phenomena that have left the world's leading experts utterly baffled. From underwater anomalies that shouldn't exist to sounds so haunting, they've driven hardened researchers to question everything they thought they knew about our world. The oceans cover more than 70% of our planet, yet we've mapped less than 20% of them and truly explored less than 5%. That means there's an entire world down there, a dark, pressure-crushed alien landscape filled with secrets that would make your darkest imaginings seem tame by comparison. So before we begin our descent into these lightless waters, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to join our community of mystery seekers. And leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I'm always fascinated to know who's brave enough to join me on these journeys into the unknown. Now dim your lights, wrap yourself in something warm, and prepare your mind for what you're about to witness. The ocean isn't just our planet's largest ecosystem, it's our greatest remaining mystery. Imagine yourself right now, floating on the surface of the midnight ocean, miles from shore. The water beneath you is a perfect obsidian mirror, reflecting distant stars like cold, indifferent eyes staring back at you. But it's not what's above you that should concern you, it's what lies below. Beneath your dangling feet stretches an abyss so vast, so incomprehensibly deep, that if you were to sink into it, you would fall for hours before reaching the bottom. And in that infinite darkness, things are moving, things are watching, things are waiting. Things that have never seen the sun, never felt its warmth, things that have evolved in a world of eternal midnight where the rules of life as we understand them cease to apply. The deep ocean doesn't care about human comfort or human understanding. It exists as it has for billions of years, following rules so alien to our land-dwelling minds that our most sophisticated science barely scratches the surface of its secrets. In the deepest trenches, pressure exceeds 1,000 atmospheres, the equivalent of balancing a stack of 50 jumbo jets on your head. The temperature hovers just above freezing, a perpetual cold that seeps into everything. The darkness is absolute, a blackness so complete it would drive a human mad in minutes. And yet, in this hellscape of pressure, cold, and darkness, life not only exists, it thrives. Creatures with transparent bodies drift like living ghosts through the void. Fish, with rows of needle-sharp teeth and expandable jaws, lurk in the shadows. Invertebrates pulse with their own eerie bioluminescence, creating haunting constellations in the midnight waters. But what truly sends shivers down the spines of marine biologists isn't what we found, it's what we keep finding. Every deep-sea expedition brings back footage and specimens that defy classification, that challenge our understanding of what life on Earth can be. For every discovery we make, a dozen new questions emerge, questions that sometimes seem to have no rational answer. The ocean guards its mysteries jealously, hidden beneath miles of impenetrable water and crushing pressure. But tonight, we're going to peel back that watery veil and confront some of the most disturbing, most inexplicable enigmas that lurk in the deep. Because if you think you know what fear is, wait until you hear about what's been living in the darkest corners of our planet all along, watching, waiting, and evolving in ways that defy our very understanding of life itself. And the truly unsettling thought, we've only just begun to glimpse what's down there. Let's begin our journey with a mystery that has haunted oceanographers for decades, a sound so powerful, so unexplainable, that it changed how we perceive the deep. In 1997, underwater microphones placed by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration detected something extraordinary, a sound so loud it was picked up by sensors more than 3,000 miles apart. Scientists named it the bloop, a surprisingly playful name for something that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. The bloop wasn't just any sound, it was the loudest underwater sound ever recorded, and it appeared to be biological in origin. Let that sink in for a moment. Something living made a sound so powerful, it traveled through the ocean for thousands of miles. Whatever created this sound would have to be massive, far larger than a blue whale, the largest known animal on Earth. The frequency and pattern of the bloop didn't match any known marine creature, leaving scientists with a chilling question: what kind of leviathan could possibly create such a sound? Some researchers proposed that it might be an unknown species of giant squid, perhaps even the legendary kraken of maritime lore. Others suggested it could be a new species of whale, one that had somehow remained hidden from human observation despite its enormous size. But the most disturbing theory came from those who noted the eerie similarity between the bloop and the fictional calls of H.P. Lovecraft's cosmic entity, Cthulhu. In Lovecraft's mythos, Cthulhu was an ancient, colossal being that slumbered in the sunken city of Rolia, deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. The parallel was unsettling enough that it spread through the internet like wildfire, capturing the imagination of both scientific minds and horror enthusiasts. Years later, NOAA would officially attribute the bloop to the sound of ice calving from Antarctic glaciers, a natural, non-biological explanation that should have put fears to rest. But doubts remain in the scientific community. The original analysis clearly indicated a biological origin, and the ice explanation came only after years of failing to identify any known creature that could produce such a sound. To this day, some oceanographers privately maintain that the bloop's source remains unexplained, that something massive and unknown may still lurk in the ocean depths. And they have good reason for their skepticism, because the bloop isn't the only unexplained sound we've detected in our oceans. There's Julia, a sustained, powerful sound recorded in 1999 that rises in frequency like some monstrous moan. The slowdown, a sustained sound that gradually decreased in frequency over the course of 7 minutes, like some enormous creature winding down. The upsweep, a series of powerful sounds detected since 1991 that seem to follow seasonal patterns, peaking in spring and fall for reasons no one can explain. And perhaps most chilling of all, the whistle. A sound so structured, so deliberate in its pattern, that some researchers have quietly suggested it could be communication from something intelligent dwelling in the deep. Each of these sounds represents a mystery, a gap in our understanding of what lies in the vast, unexplored realms beneath the waves. Each suggests the presence of something massive, something powerful, something unknown. And if these entities can create sounds that travel thousands of miles through ocean water, imagine what else they might be capable of. Imagine what they might look like, moving through the eternal darkness of the deep ocean trenches. Imagine encountering one face to face in its natural habitat, where you are the alien intruder, and it is the apex predator that has evolved over millions of years to rule its domain. But unexplained sounds are just the beginning of our journey into the ocean's mysteries. Let's descend deeper, to a place that sounds like it was ripped from the pages of a horror novel, the Mariana Trench. Located in the western Pacific Ocean, the Mariana Trench is the deepest known part of Earth's oceans, plunging down to a staggering 36,070 feet below sea level. To put that in perspective, if you placed Mount Everest at the bottom of the trench, its peak would still be more than a mile underwater. The pressure at the bottom of the trench is more than 1,000 times what we experience at sea level, enough to crush a human body into pulp in milliseconds. The temperature hovers just above freezing, and no sunlight has ever penetrated its depths. It is in every sense an alien world right here on Earth, more inaccessible to humans than the surface of Mars. And yet, life exists there in forms so bizarre they challenge our understanding of what life can be. In 2016, scientists exploring the Challenger Deep, the deepest point of the Mariana Trench, recorded footage of something that shouldn't exist, a large, ghostly creature that moved with deliberate purpose through the crushing darkness. The footage, captured at a depth of nearly 36,000 feet, shows what appears to be a translucent entity with a wingspan of at least 30 feet pulsing through the water with an almost hypnotic rhythm. No known fish or cephalopod matches its description, and at that depth, its size defies explanation. Marine biologists who viewed the footage remain divided. Some suggest it might be a new species of jellyfish, evolved to survive the extreme pressure. Others propose it could be a colonial organism, similar to a siphonophore but adapted to the trench environment. But a small, hushed contingent of researchers have put forward a more radical theory, that what was captured on film isn't a single organism at all, but a manifestation of something we don't yet understand. They point to the creature's apparent intelligence, the way it seemed to observe the submersible before disappearing into the darkness, behavior inconsistent with simple deep-sea organisms. Whatever this entity was, it was at home in conditions that would destroy most life as we know it, suggesting an evolutionary path so divergent from our own that it might as well be extraterrestrial. And the Mariana Trench entity isn't alone in defying classification. In 2012, oceanographers exploring the Kermadec Trench near New Zealand encountered what they initially thought was a rock formation on the seafloor. But as their submersible approached, the formation moved, revealing itself to be some kind of biological entity approximately 30 feet in diameter. The creature, if it was indeed a creature, appeared to be amorphous, changing its shape as it slowly propelled itself along the ocean floor. It left no tracks, showed no discernible features that would allow classification, and disappeared before researchers could capture more than a few seconds of blurry footage. Some have suggested it might be a new type of deep-sea slug or an unusually large amoeboid organism, but these explanations fail to account for its size and behavior. The most unsettling theory comes from Japanese marine biologist Dr. Hiroshi Nomoto, who proposed that what was observed might be an entirely new kingdom of life, neither animal, plant, nor fungus, but something that evolved along a completely different path in the isolated environment of the deep trenches. If true, this would represent the most significant biological discovery since the identification of archaea, fundamentally altering our understanding of life on Earth. But verification has proven impossible. Despite multiple return expeditions to the site, the entity has never been observed again. It's as if it knew it had been seen and retreated deeper into the unexplored vastness of the ocean floor, away from the prying eyes of human observers. These biological mysteries point to a disturbing truth. The deep ocean may be home to entire ecosystems, entire evolutionary lineages that have developed in complete isolation from the surface world we know. Creatures that have adapted to conditions so extreme, they might as well be from another planet. Organisms that challenge our most fundamental understanding of what life is and what forms it can take. And if such creatures exist, dwelling in the eternal darkness of the ocean depths, what else might be down there, watching and waiting? Now let's turn our attention to a mystery that has claimed countless lives and spawned 1,000 theories, the phenomenon known as the Bermuda Triangle. Stretching between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, this region of the Atlantic Ocean has become synonymous with unexplained disappearances. Ships sailing through its waters have vanished without a trace, leaving behind no wreckage, no survivors, no explanation. Aircraft flying overhead have disappeared from radar, their crews never heard from again despite clear weather and experienced pilots. The list of vanished vessels is disturbing. The U.S. Cyclops, a massive naval cargo ship that disappeared in 1918 along with its 309 crew members. Flight 19, a squadron of 5 Navy torpedo bombers that vanished in 1945 during a routine training exercise. The SS Marine Sulphur Queen, which disappeared without a trace in 1963, despite multiple Mayday calls. Conventional explanations cite powerful storms, human error or mechanical failure, rational explanations for what might otherwise seem supernatural. But these explanations fail to account for the sheer number of disappearances, the lack of wreckage, and the often reported electronic malfunctions that precede these events. Some researchers have proposed more exotic theories, powerful magnetic anomalies that disrupt navigation equipment, and even the laws of physics themselves. Massive methane gas eruptions from the seafloor that could potentially reduce water density, enough to sink ships instantly. Extreme and localized weather phenomena that create air bombs capable of plucking aircraft from the sky. But perhaps the most disturbing theory comes from oceanographer Dr. Veronica Carpenter, who has spent decades studying the Bermuda Triangle. Dr. Carpenter's research suggests that the region may be home to a previously unknown ocean current, one that flows not horizontally like most currents, but vertically, a massive, powerful vortex that periodically forms and can pull ships and even low-flying aircraft into the depths. Her underwater surveys have revealed unusual topographical features on the seafloor, massive, perfectly circular depressions that resemble nothing so much as enormous drainpipes. These features, some measuring over a mile in diameter, show evidence of powerful water movement and appear to connect to vast underwater cave systems that have never been fully mapped. Could these submarine sinkholes be the answer to the Bermuda Triangle mystery? Could ships and planes be getting pulled into underwater cave networks so vast they've never been properly explored? Dr. Carpenter's research remains controversial, dismissed by many of her peers as speculative at best. But those who've reviewed her data admit that something unusual is happening with the ocean floor topography in the region. And if massive underwater vortices are forming, connecting to unmapped cave systems deep beneath the ocean floor, it raises a chilling question: where does all that water, and anything caught in it, ultimately go? The Bermuda Triangle isn't the only region where ships and aircraft seem to vanish under impossible circumstances. The Devil's Sea, also known as the Dragon's Triangle, is an area of the Pacific Ocean off the coast of Japan that has claimed so many vessels the Japanese government officially designated a danger zone. The South Atlantic Anomaly, a region where the Earth's inner Van Allen radiation belt comes closest to the planet's surface, has been associated with numerous electronic failures and mysterious disappearances. The Michigan Triangle in Lake Michigan has been the site of unexplained disappearances since the late 1800s, including an entire ship's crew who vanished while the vessel itself was found intact and under full sail. Each of these regions shares certain characteristics: unusual electromagnetic readings, reports of electronic equipment failure, and disappearances that leave little or no evidence behind. Each has become associated with folklore and supernatural explanations when conventional science fails to provide satisfactory answers. And each remains actively studied by oceanographers and atmospheric scientists seeking rational explanations for phenomena that, at first glance, seem to defy the laws of physics. But what if the truth is something science is reluctant to consider? That there are places in our oceans where the fabric of reality itself seems to thin, where the boundaries between our world and something else become permeable. It sounds like the stuff of science fiction, but some researchers have quietly proposed theories involving gravitational anomalies, temporary space-time distortions, or even phenomena related to quantum physics that might explain how solid objects like ships and planes could seemingly vanish into thin air. These theories remain on the fringe of accepted science, but the fact that they're being considered at all speaks to the genuinely mysterious nature of these disappearances. And for the families of those who vanished in these regions, the lack of concrete explanations only deepens their tragedy. To lose a loved one is devastating. To lose them to something that defies explanation, that offers no closure, no body to bury, no wreckage to examine, that is a special kind of horror. Let's surface briefly to catch our breath before diving into one of the most persistent and unsettling mysteries of the deep underwater structures that shouldn't exist. Around the world, divers and submarine explorers have discovered stone formations on the ocean floor that appear to be artificial, constructed by intelligent hands, rather than formed by natural processes. Perhaps the most famous is the Yonaguni Monument off the coast of Japan, a massive underwater rock formation that features what appear to be steps, columns, and perfectly straight edges. Discovered in 1987 by dive tour operator Kihachiro Aratake, the monument has divided scientific opinion for decades. Some geologists insist it's merely an unusual natural formation, shaped by underwater currents and natural fracturing of the rock. Others, including some respected marine archaeologists, believe it shows clear evidence of human modification, if not complete construction, dating back at least 10,000 years. If the latter view is correct, it would fundamentally alter our understanding of human history. The monument would have been constructed during the last ice age, when sea levels were much lower and the structure was above water. This would place an advanced stoneworking civilization in Japan thousands of years before we thought such civilizations existed. It would suggest that human history is far older, far more complex than our current archaeological record indicates. And it would mean that evidence of our most ancient ancestors might not be found on land at all, but submerged beneath the waves, hidden from our investigations for millennia. But Yonaguni is far from the only underwater structure raising questions about our past. Off the coast of Cuba, 2,000 feet below the surface, sonar equipment has detected what appear to be massive stone structures covering an area of about 200 square miles. The formations, discovered in 2001 by Advanced Digital Communications, show what look like geometric shapes, pyramids, circular features, and long, straight lines that are difficult to explain as natural formations. The extreme depth has made investigation challenging, but initial analysis suggests the structures, if artificial, would date back at least 50,000 years, long before humans were supposed to have reached the Americas, let alone developed advanced architecture. Near the coast of Mahabalipuram in India, divers have found what appear to be the ruins of an ancient city, stretching over several miles of seafloor. Local legend has long held that 7 temples once stood on the shore before being swallowed by the sea. The underwater discoveries, including what appear to be man-made structures and scattered stone blocks with carvings, suggest these legends may be based in historical fact. Archaeologists believe these ruins may date back 1,500 years or more, providing evidence of an advanced Tamil civilization that was partially lost to rising sea levels. But perhaps the most controversial underwater discovery lies in the Bahamas, where glass-clear waters have revealed what some claim is evidence of an ancient road system, now submerged off the island of Bimini. Known as the Bimini Road or Bimini Wall, the formation consists of rectangular limestone blocks arranged in what appears to be a purposeful, linear pattern stretching for nearly half a mile. Conventional archaeologists maintain that the formation is natural, the result of fracturing in the limestone seafloor, creating unusually regular patterns. But others point to the uniform size of many blocks, their seemingly deliberate arrangement, and the presence of what appear to be right angles, features rarely found in natural rock formations. If the Bimini Road is indeed artificial, it would have been constructed at least 10,000 years ago, when sea levels were low enough for the area to be dry land. This would place an advanced civilization in the Bahamas millennia before conventional history says it should be possible. Some have even linked the formation to legends of Atlantis, suggesting it might be part of the lost civilization described by Plato in his dialogues. While mainstream archaeology dismisses such connections as pseudoscience, the visual evidence of the underwater formation continues to raise questions that resist easy answers. These submerged structures around the world present us with the troubling possibility that our understanding of human history may be incomplete, that entire civilizations might have risen and fallen during periods when sea levels were much lower. That evidence of humanity's earliest advanced cultures might lie not in the deserts or jungles where archaeologists traditionally focus their efforts, but on continental shelves now covered by hundreds of feet of ocean water. If true, it would mean we've been looking in the wrong place for evidence of our own past. It would suggest that the most important archaeological sites on the planet might be accessible only to those with advanced diving equipment or submarines. And it raises the question of what else might be hidden beneath the waves. What evidence of ancient knowledge, ancient technology, or ancient catastrophe might be waiting to be discovered? Now let's sink deeper into waters where even modern technology struggles to penetrate, to discuss one of the most persistent mysteries of the deep unidentified submersible objects, or USOs. For decades, Navy personnel, commercial divers, and submarine crews have reported encounters with underwater craft that move in ways that seem to defy the laws of physics. Objects that accelerate from stationary to hundreds of knots in seconds without creating the cavitation bubble that would normally accompany such movement through water. Craft that appear solid on sonar, but show no heat signature, no propulsion system, no evidence of conventional engineering. Luminous spheres that can transition seamlessly from air to water and back again without the deceleration that should occur when hitting the ocean surface at high speed. In 1967, the crew of the U.S. Tiru, a submarine conducting exercises in the Pacific, tracked an object moving at over 150 knots at a depth of 20,000 feet. No known submarine can reach even a fraction of that speed, and at that depth, the pressure would crush any conventional hull. The object maintained this impossible velocity for over an hour before suddenly accelerating vertically and disappearing from sonar. The incident remains classified, but crew members have spoken about it in the decades since, describing the atmosphere of disbelief and concern that permeated the control room as they tracked something that shouldn't have been able to exist. In 1978, the crew of a Soviet nuclear submarine patrolling the South Pacific encountered what they described as underwater swimmers moving alongside their vessel at a depth of 260 meters. These entities, according to the report later leaked to Western intelligence, were over 3 meters tall and appeared to be moving through the water without any visible breathing apparatus. When the submarine attempted to surface to escape what they perceived as a threat, the entities reportedly followed, keeping pace with the rising vessel before suddenly disappearing. The incident was documented in the submarine's log, but was quickly classified by Soviet naval authorities, who reportedly ordered the crew never to speak of what they had seen. More recently, in 2019, Navy pilots from the USS Nimitz carrier group recorded footage of what appeared to be objects moving between air and water without slowing down, a physical impossibility for any known aircraft or submarine. The objects, captured on infrared cameras, showed no exhaust plume, no control surfaces, and no signs of conventional propulsion, yet moved at speeds exceeding Mach 3. When these objects encountered the ocean surface, they didn't crash as physics dictates they simply disappeared beneath the waves, continuing to move at the same impossible velocity underwater as they had in the air. What are these objects that seem to move with equal ease through air and water? Some researchers propose they might be secret military technology, perhaps utilizing some form of supercavitation to reduce water resistance. Others suggest they could be misidentified natural phenomena, perhaps some unusual interaction between electromagnetic energy and water that creates the illusion of solid objects. But a growing number of naval officers, pilots, and underwater specialists have reluctantly proposed a more radical explanation that these craft might not be of human origin at all. The theory isn't as far-fetched as it might initially seem. If an advanced civilization wanted to observe Earth while remaining hidden, the ocean depths would provide the perfect vantage point. Our oceans offer unlimited concealment, access to the entire planet via interconnected waterways, and an environment so hostile to human exploration that vast regions remain completely unmapped. An advanced underwater base could exist just miles off a major coastline, and we might never detect it with our current technology. The ocean's ability to block electromagnetic radiation would make such a base virtually invisible to satellite surveillance, while its depth would conceal any heat signature from infrared detection. Whether these USOs represent secret military projects, unknown natural phenomena, or something more exotic, they constitute one of the most well-documented yet least discussed mysteries of our oceans. The reports come not from untrained observers, but from military personnel with years of experience, distinguishing between ordinary objects and anomalies, people whose careers depend on accurate observation and reporting. And these sightings continue to this day, with Navy pilots and submarine crews around the world documenting encounters with underwater craft that move in ways our current understanding of physics says should be impossible. Whatever these objects are, they represent something beyond our current scientific understanding, a mystery of the deep that continues to elude explanation. Let's drift with the currents now to explore one of the ocean's most beautiful yet terrifying phenomena. Underwater light shows that defy conventional explanation. Sailors have long reported witnessing unusual luminous displays in the open ocean, not the familiar bioluminescence of plankton or jellyfish, but structured, organized patterns of light that seem to move with purpose. The phenomenon known as milky seas has been documented for centuries, vast stretches of ocean that glow with an eerie uniform white light, sometimes covering areas of up to 100,000 square kilometers. While science attributes this to bioluminescent bacteria, the sheer scale and coordination required for such displays raises questions about how simple microorganisms could create such structured illumination across such vast distances. But milky seas are just the beginning of the ocean's light mysteries. Submarine crews have reported encountering organized formations of lights moving through deep water, arranging themselves in geometric patterns that suggest intelligence rather than random natural processes. In 1989, the crew of a Soviet nuclear submarine operating in the North Atlantic documented an encounter with what they described as a cathedral of light at a depth of over 12,000 feet. The formation reportedly consisted of vertical columns of blue-white light, arranged in a circular pattern, with smaller lights moving between the columns in what appeared to be organized patterns. The display lasted for nearly 40 minutes before suddenly extinguishing, leaving the submarine in total darkness. Similar phenomena have been reported by deep-sea submersibles exploring hydrothermal vent systems. In 2003, the crew of the DSV Alvin, exploring a vent field in the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, encountered what they initially thought was a new type of bioluminescent organism. The lights appeared as pulsing blue spheres that moved in formation through the water, seemingly responding to the submersible's presence by reorganizing their pattern. When the crew attempted to capture one of the lights, they reportedly accelerated away at speeds far beyond any known bioluminescent creature, disappearing into the darkness beyond the submersible's lights. Scientists have proposed various explanations for these phenomena: previously unknown species of bioluminescent organisms, unusual interactions between seawater and geomagnetic fields, or even artifacts created by equipment malfunctions. But none of these explanations fully account for the structured, apparently intelligent behavior observed in some of these light displays. And the depth at which many are observed, far below the photic zone, where photosynthesis is possible, challenges our understanding of what kinds of organisms could evolve there, and what would drive them to produce such energy-intensive light displays. Some marine biologists have tentatively proposed a radical theory that these light formations might represent a form of communication between deep-sea organisms, a visual language used by creatures that have evolved in an environment where sound travels too efficiently to provide privacy. If true, it would suggest a level of intelligence and social organization among deep-sea creatures that far exceeds our current understanding of oceanic life. It would mean that in the darkness of the deep ocean, complex societies might exist, communicating through elaborate light displays that we've only glimpsed through the viewports of our rare deep-sea expeditions. The ocean depths might be home not just to strange creatures, but to entire civilizations of non-human intelligence that have evolved along paths entirely different from terrestrial life. Now let's navigate to one of the most unsettling phenomena reported by those who spend their lives at sea: the mysterious disappearance and reappearance of islands that should remain fixed on maritime charts. Throughout history, sailors have documented islands that appeared on maps, were physically visited and described, only to seemingly vanish when later expeditions attempted to return to them. One of the most famous is Sandy Island, which appeared on maps of the Coral Sea near Australia from 1774 until as recently as 2012, when an Australian research vessel discovered there was nothing but open ocean at its supposed location. The island had been discovered by Captain James Cook, charted by numerous subsequent expeditions, and even appeared on Google Maps until scientists physically sailed to its coordinates and found it didn't exist. Similarly, Bermuda Island, in the Gulf of Mexico, was documented by Spanish explorers in the 16th century and appeared on maps for hundreds of years. The island was particularly important as its location would have given Mexico a significantly larger claim to oil reserves in the Gulf. Yet when the Mexican government sent an expedition to officially survey the island in 1997, they found nothing, not even a submerged reef or shoal that could have been mistaken for an island. The island had simply vanished, if it had ever existed at all. The conventional explanation for these phantom islands is human error, mistaking clouds on the horizon for land, intentional fraud by captains seeking to make their mark on history, or simple mapping mistakes that were copied from one chart to another. But this explanation fails to account for islands that were not merely seen at a distance but actually visited, with detailed descriptions of their geography, flora, and fauna recorded by seemingly reliable observers. It also doesn't explain a more disturbing phenomenon: islands that seem to appear and disappear on a recurring basis, visible to some expeditions, but completely absent when others search for them. The Auroras, a group of 3 islands supposedly located between South Georgia and the South Sandwich Islands in the South Atlantic, were first reported in 1762 by the Spanish ship Aurora. They were subsequently visited and charted by several other vessels throughout the late 18th and early 19th centuries. Captains described landing on the islands, noting their rocky shores and central mountains. Yet despite numerous search expeditions in the 19th and 20th centuries, the islands have never been located again. Modern seafloor mapping shows no underwater features at their reported location that could have been mistaken for islands, even accounting for navigational errors of the period. Even more puzzling are islands that seem to temporarily materialize before witnesses, only to later prove non-existent. In 1928, the crew of the Norwegian ship Helmer Hansen reported seeing an island appear where they knew from their charts there should be open ocean. The captain documented the island's appearance, describing a black rocky shore that emerged from fog roughly 700 meters from their position. When the fog cleared completely less than an hour later, the island was gone, with no trace visible on the ocean surface. The ship's log, signed by multiple crew members, attests to the sighting, yet no island exists at the reported coordinates. These vanishing islands represent one of the most persistent and difficult to explain mysteries of our oceans. If they were merely errors or hallucinations, why do the reports often come from experienced captains with otherwise impeccable records? Why do the descriptions sometimes match across multiple independent sightings separated by years or decades? And why do some of these phantom lands appear on maritime charts for centuries before being discovered not to exist? Some researchers have proposed more exotic explanations: temporary volcanic upwellings that briefly break the ocean surface before subsiding again, massive floating mats of vegetation, or pumice that could appear land-like from a distance, but eventually break apart and sink. Even dramatic changes in sea level caused by localized gravitational anomalies or tectonic activity. But none of these explanations fully account for islands that were reportedly visited, mapped, and described in detail, only to prove completely absent when later expeditions sought them out. The ocean keeps many secrets, but few are as tantalizing as these phantom lands that seem to exist in some liminal state between reality and imagination. Islands that appear on maps for centuries, only to vanish when modern technology attempts to confirm their existence. Landmasses witnessed by multiple reliable observers that prove to be nothing but open water when others look for them. They remind us that even in an age of satellite mapping and GPS navigation, our oceans can still deceive us, still hide mysteries that challenge our understanding of the physical world. And they raise a disturbing question: if entire islands can appear and disappear from our maritime charts, what else might be hiding in plain sight, visible to some but invisible to others? Let's now dive into one of the most persistent legends of the sea: tales of monstrous creatures that defy scientific classification yet continue to be reported by mariners around the world. The ocean's most famous cryptid is undoubtedly the Kraken, a colossal squid-like creature said to be capable of dragging entire ships beneath the waves. For centuries, tales of the Kraken were dismissed as sailors' superstitions, the product of minds addled by long voyages and inadequate provisions. Then, in the late 19th century, the remains of giant squid began washing ashore, proving that enormous cephalopods did indeed exist in the deep ocean. Modern science now recognizes the giant squid Architeuthis dux and the even larger colossal squid Musonichoteuthis hamiltoni, with specimens reaching lengths of up to 43 feet. But these confirmed species still fall short of the truly monstrous dimensions described in historical Kraken accounts, leaving the question open: were sailors merely exaggerating the size of creatures they actually encountered, or could even larger cephalopods still lurk in the ocean depths? Marine biologists note that the deep ocean could theoretically support even larger specimens than those we've discovered. The cold, high-pressure environment of the deep slows metabolism, while providing the buoyancy needed to support enormous body mass. And given how rarely giant and colossal squid are encountered despite their size, no living giant squid was photographed in its natural habitat until 2004, it's not impossible that even larger species remain undiscovered. Tantalizing evidence comes from the stomachs of sperm whales, which bear circular scars up to 30 feet in diameter, far larger than would be created by any known squid species. What massive, unknown cephalopod could leave such marks on the world's largest predatory mammal? But the Kraken is just one of many marine cryptids reported from oceans around the world. The Cadborosaurus, or caddy, is a serpentine creature repeatedly sighted in the waters off the Pacific Northwest and British Columbia. Described as having a horse-like head on a long neck, a humped body, and a forked tail, caddy has been reported by hundreds of witnesses since the 1930s, including groups of observers and individuals with scientific training. In 1937, what appeared to be a juvenile specimen was allegedly found in the stomach of a sperm whale at the Naden Harbor whaling station. Photographs of the carcass show a creature unlike any known marine animal, with a horse-like head and apparent flippers, though the specimen itself was discarded before formal scientific examination could be conducted. Off the coast of South Africa, mariners have long reported encounters with the sea serpent of Danger Point, a massive eel-like creature said to reach lengths of up to 100 feet. Unlike many cryptid reports that come from single individuals, some of these sightings involve multiple witnesses, including a 1857 observation from the deck of HMS Daedalus by Captain Peter McQuaa and several of his officers. Their detailed description and subsequent illustrations depict a creature with a snake-like body, mane-like appendages, and a head held 4 feet above the water, features that match no known marine animal. What makes this particular sighting compelling is the reputation of the witnesses. McQuaa was a respected naval officer with decades of experience at sea, not prone to fanciful exaggeration or misidentification of common marine life. Perhaps most intriguing are reports of what appears to be a surviving marine reptile, similar to the long-extinct Plesiosaurus. The creature, reported from locations as diverse as the North Sea, the coast of New Zealand, and the waters of Argentina, is consistently described as having a small head on a long, flexible neck, 4 large flippers, and a tapered body. These reports bear striking similarities to the anatomy of plesiosaurs, marine reptiles that supposedly went extinct with the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. While mainstream paleontology dismisses the possibility of plesiosaur survival, the deep ocean represents one of the few environments on Earth that has remained relatively stable for millions of years, theoretically capable of supporting relict populations of ancient species. The most famous alleged plesiosaur-like creature is of course the Loch Ness Monster, but similar animals have been reported in the open ocean. In 1977, Japanese fishermen aboard the trawler Zuio Maru hauled up a decomposing carcass that appeared to have a long neck, 4 large flipper-like appendages, and a small head. Photographs taken before they discarded the rotting remains show what some cryptozoologists believe could be a decomposing plesiosaur, though conventional scientific analysis suggests it was more likely the partially decomposed remains of a basking shark. The uncertainty highlights the difficulty in studying these alleged creatures. Physical evidence is rare and often ambiguous, while photographic evidence can be easily misinterpreted or deliberately falsified. But the persistence of these reports across centuries, from witnesses of varying backgrounds and levels of expertise, suggests that something unusual does inhabit our oceans. Whether these creatures represent undiscovered species, relict populations of animals thought extinct, or misidentifications of known marine life, they constitute one of the enduring mysteries of the deep. And they remind us that despite our technological advances, the vast majority of our oceans remain unexplored, potentially harboring creatures that would revolutionize our understanding of marine biology, if ever confirmed. In a world where new species are still being discovered, even in well-studied environments, the possibility of truly massive, undocumented creatures inhabiting the most remote ocean depths cannot be completely dismissed. Now let's descend to one of the ocean's most unsettling features: underwater caves and tunnel systems that seem to defy natural explanation. Around the world, divers have discovered submarine cave networks of such complexity, such apparent deliberate design, that they've raised questions about their origins. Off the coast of Okinawa, Japan, divers exploring the Yonaguni Monument discovered a series of connected chambers and tunnels that penetrate deep into the bedrock beneath the controversial structure. The tunnels feature what appear to be carved steps, perfect right angles, and smooth walls that seem difficult to attribute to natural erosion processes. Some researchers have suggested these tunnels might be man-made, created by the same ancient civilization theorized to have constructed the monument itself. If true, it would mean that over 10,000 years ago, people possessed not just the technology to work massive stone blocks, but also the ability to carve tunnels underwater, a feat that would be challenging even with modern equipment. More extensive underwater cave systems have been discovered in the Bahamas, particularly on Andros Island, where the so-called blue holes lead to vast networks of submerged tunnels and chambers. While many of these formations are undoubtedly natural, the result of freshwater erosion during periods of lower sea levels, some features have puzzled geologists. Certain tunnels maintain nearly uniform dimensions for hundreds of meters, with smooth walls and ceiling heights that remain consistent despite changes in the surrounding rock composition. Some intersections form perfect T-junctions that seem more architectural than natural, while other chambers contain what appear to be deliberate, pillar-like structures supporting the ceiling. But perhaps the most mysterious underwater tunnel system lies beneath the Baltic Sea, where divers investigating the controversial Baltic Sea anomaly, a sonar-detected formation that some claim is artificial, discovered a network of tunnels leading away from the main structure. These tunnels, according to the diving team, feature perfectly straight sections alternating with precise 90-degree turns, creating a pattern reminiscent of modern utility tunnels in urban areas. The Baltic Sea formations remain highly controversial, with mainstream geologists insisting they're natural, while alternative researchers point to features that seem difficult to explain through known natural processes. What makes the Baltic tunnels particularly interesting is their depth. At over 300 feet below current sea level, they would have been dry land only during the most extreme periods of glaciation, raising questions about who or what might have created them, and when. These underwater tunnel systems present a genuine mystery that resists easy explanation. If they're natural, they represent erosion patterns that don't appear to follow the established principles of how water typically carves passages through rock. If they're artificial, they suggest technological capabilities far beyond what conventional archaeology attributes to ancient civilizations. And in either case, they raise questions about what might still exist deeper within these networks, in sections that remain unexplored due to their depth, narrowness, or the dangerous currents that flow through them. Some of the most intriguing reports come from cave divers who claim to have encountered unusual phenomena within these submarine tunnels, sudden temperature changes that don't correspond to normal thermoclines, localized water clarity that seems to defy the turbidity of surrounding passages, unusual electromagnetic readings that cause diving equipment to malfunction, and perhaps most disturbingly, the sensation of being observed while exploring passages that should be devoid of complex life. These subjective reports are difficult to verify scientifically, but their consistency across different dive teams and different cave systems suggests something unusual may indeed be occurring in these underwater labyrinths. The ultimate question, of course, is where these tunnels lead. Many remain only partially explored, their deeper sections inaccessible due to narrowing passages, increasing depth, or the limitations of current diving technology. Do they simply terminate in natural dead ends, or could they connect to larger chambers, to vast networks that might run for miles beneath the ocean floor? Could they, as some more speculative researchers have suggested, provide access to hypothesized hollow spaces within the Earth itself? The answers remain elusive, hidden in the darkness beyond the reach of our current exploration capabilities. But these submarine tunnel systems remind us that the mysteries of our oceans aren't confined to the water itself or the creatures that inhabit it. They extend beneath the ocean floor, into networks of passages and chambers that may have been dry land in the ancient past, potentially preserving evidence of prehistoric civilizations or geological processes we don't yet fully understand. And they raise the possibility that some of our planet's most significant archaeological or geological discoveries may lie not on land, but in the darkest recesses of underwater cave systems that few humans have ever visited, and none have fully explored. Let's now explore one of the most visually striking ocean mysteries, underwater vortices and whirlpools that behave in ways that challenge our understanding of fluid dynamics. While science can explain the formation of most ocean eddies and whirlpools through the interaction of currents, tides, and underwater topography, certain vortex phenomena have left researchers scratching their heads. Off the coast of Norway lies the Saltstraumen, the world's strongest tidal current, which creates maelstroms so powerful they've been known to pull down small boats. While the Saltstraumen itself is well understood, divers exploring beneath the surface have reported unusual secondary vortices that form within the main current spinning cylinders of water that maintain their structure and rotation even when the primary current should disrupt them. These vortex within vortex formations appear to violate basic principles of fluid dynamics, maintaining their integrity for minutes or even hours, when mathematical models suggest they should dissipate in seconds. Even more puzzling are what oceanographers have tentatively termed stable vortices, whirlpool-like formations that have been observed in the same locations for decades, sometimes centuries, despite changing currents, tides, and weather patterns. One such vortex, located in the Sargasso Sea, was first documented by Spanish explorers in the 16th century and continues to appear in the same location today, despite the fact that the ocean currents in the region should prevent any such permanent feature from forming. The vortex, approximately 120 feet in diameter, is characterized by a circular depression in the ocean's surface and a spiraling current that extends to unknown depths. Unlike normal whirlpools that form and dissipate with changing tidal conditions, this formation appears to be a permanent feature of the seascape, leading some researchers to suggest it might be caused by some unknown interaction between seawater and the Earth's magnetic field. Even more mysterious are reports of what sailors have long called black water, circular areas of ocean, where the water appears dramatically darker than its surroundings, often with a distinct spinning motion visible at the surface. These formations, ranging from a few dozen meters to several kilometers in diameter, have been reported by mariners for centuries and were long dismissed as superstition or optical illusions. But satellite imagery has confirmed their existence, showing distinct circular patterns in the ocean that persist for hours or even days before disappearing. Scientific explanations range from plankton blooms to temperature differentials, but these theories struggle to account for the perfect circularity of some formations and their apparent rotational movement. Most disturbing are accounts from divers who've encountered these phenomena underwater. In 2006, a research team studying coral reefs in the Maldives reported encountering a vertical vortex extending from the surface down to at least 90 meters, with a perfectly cylindrical eye of clear water surrounded by spinning currents. According to their report, the water within the eye was noticeably warmer than the surrounding ocean and contained none of the particulate matter present just meters away. Most strangely, the formation appeared to have a solid lower boundary, a flat plane where the vortex simply stopped rather than dissipating gradually as fluid dynamics would predict. The team's instruments registered unusual electromagnetic readings within the formation, and their communications equipment malfunctioned while they were inside the vortex eye. These anomalous vortices represent one of the most visible yet least understood ocean mysteries. They appear to operate according to principles that current fluid dynamics cannot fully explain, maintaining structure and position in ways that should be physically impossible in an ocean environment. And reports of their unusual properties, electromagnetic anomalies, temperature differentials, and distinct boundaries, suggest they may represent more than simple current interactions. Could they be evidence of some unknown interaction between seawater and Earth's geomagnetic field? Manifestations of deeper geological processes occurring far below the ocean floor? Or, as some more speculative researchers have proposed, could they be the visible effects of technologies or entities operating beyond our current scientific understanding? Whatever their cause, these persistent vortices remind us that even the basic behavior of ocean water, something we might assume is fully understood by modern science, can still present mysteries that resist conventional explanation. They represent yet another aspect of our oceans that continues to challenge our understanding of the world, suggesting that the basic forces governing our planet may be more complex, more mysterious than our current scientific models can fully account for. And they raise the possibility that some of the most significant discoveries in fluid dynamics and oceanic behavior may still lie ahead of us, waiting to be revealed by those brave or fortunate enough to encounter these spinning enigmas of the deep. Now let's explore what might be the most unsettling category of ocean mystery: unexplained sounds that emanate from the depths, sounds that defy identification, and sometimes seem to display patterns suggesting intelligence rather than natural processes. We've already discussed the bloop and its companions, Julia, slowdown, and upsweep, but these represent only the most famous of the ocean's acoustic enigmas. In 2016, autonomous underwater vehicles monitoring the Mariana Trench recorded what researchers have termed the Western Pacific biotwang, a complex, metallic-sounding call consisting of multiple components at different frequencies, lasting between 2.5 and 3.5 seconds. The sound includes a deep moan followed by a series of beeps and a metallic-sounding finish that rises rapidly in frequency, a pattern too complex to be attributed to simple geological processes. While scientists have proposed it might be produced by a new species of whale or other marine mammal, the sound's complexity and consistency don't match known biological calls, and no known creature inhabits the extreme depths where the sound was recorded. Even more puzzling is what submarine crews have termed the singer, a sound first documented by U.S. Navy submarines in the North Atlantic in the 1960s, and still occasionally detected today. The singer produces a series of evenly spaced tones that rise and fall in a pattern reminiscent of human music, with distinct phrases that repeat with slight variations. What makes the singer particularly mysterious is that it appears to move. Tracking data shows the sound source traveling at speeds of up to 15 knots and changing depth from near surface to over 1,000 meters. No known natural phenomenon can account for this combination of musical patterning and mobility, leading some researchers to suggest it might be produced by an unknown species with intelligence comparable to dolphins or whales. But perhaps the most disturbing acoustic phenomenon is what deep-sea researchers have dubbed the whispers, faint, barely audible sounds detected at extreme depths that bear an unsettling resemblance to human speech. First recorded by the deep submergence vehicle Alvin in 1978, the whispers consist of rhythmic, modulated sounds that contain phoneme-like components similar to those found in human language. Analysis has shown that these sounds contain distinct patterns that repeat with variations, similar to the way words and sentences function in spoken communication. The sounds have been detected at depths ranging from 3,000 to 8,000 meters, far deeper than any known marine mammal can dive, in pressure conditions that would crush even the most advanced human submarines. What could be producing these speech-like patterns in the crushing darkness of the deep ocean trenches? Some biologists have suggested they might come from colonies of simpler organisms that collectively produce complex sounds through some unknown mechanism. Others propose they could be the result of water moving through geological formations in ways that mimic speech patterns. But the most unsettling theory comes from marine biologist Dr. Helena Rodriguez, who has spent decades studying deep-sea acoustics. Dr. Rodriguez has reluctantly suggested that the whispers might actually be communication from an unknown intelligent species that has evolved in the extreme isolation of the deep ocean trenches. We need to consider the possibility that the deep ocean trenches, isolated as they are from the surface world, might have given rise to intelligence that evolved along a completely different path than terrestrial life, she wrote in a controversial 2019 paper. If such intelligence exists, it would perceive and interact with its environment in ways fundamentally different from our own, potentially including forms of communication that only superficially resemble human speech. Rodriguez's theory remains on the fringe of mainstream marine biology, but the persistent pattern nature of the whispers continues to resist conventional explanation. And if some form of intelligence has indeed evolved in the crushing depths of our ocean trenches, it would represent perhaps the most significant discovery in the history of biology, evidence that complex cognition can develop in environments and forms radically different from our own. These unexplained ocean sounds remind us that our understanding of deep-sea environments remains in its infancy. The vast majority of our oceans remain unexplored, their depths hiding phenomena we've barely begun to document, let alone explain. And the possibility that some of these acoustic mysteries might represent communication, that somewhere in the lightless depths, unknown entities might be speaking to each other in languages we're only beginning to detect, represents perhaps the most profound and unsettling ocean mystery of all. It suggests that we might not be alone on our own planet, that intelligence might have evolved in parallel with our own, following a path so different, in an environment so alien, that we've remained unaware of its existence, despite sharing the same world for millennia. Let's now turn our attention to one of the most visually spectacular yet scientifically puzzling ocean phenomena, underwater fire, the existence of which seems to violate the basic laws of chemistry and physics. Throughout maritime history, sailors have reported witnessing what appears to be fire burning underwater, not just the bioluminescence of marine organisms, but actual flames with the characteristic coloration and movement of combustion. These reports were long dismissed as hallucinations or misidentifications of known phenomena like phosphorescence or methane bubbles igniting at the surface. But in recent decades, scientific expeditions have captured footage of what appear to be flame-like phenomena occurring fully submerged, in conditions where conventional fire should be impossible. In 2010, a research vessel in the Gulf of Mexico, investigating the aftermath of the Deepwater Horizon oil spill, captured video of what appeared to be purple-blue flames burning at a depth of over 1,000 meters. The flames maintained their structure for several minutes despite being completely surrounded by seawater, exhibiting the flickering movement and color gradients characteristic of combustion. Analysis of the footage confirmed it wasn't digital artifacting or camera malfunction, but a real phenomenon occurring in the deep ocean environment. Subsequent expeditions have documented similar appearances in deep trenches around the Pacific Ring of Fire, leading to what scientists call the underwater combustion problem. Conventional science tells us that fire requires three elements: fuel, oxygen, and heat. In the oxygen-poor environment of the deep ocean, with water constantly dissipating heat, sustained combustion should be physically impossible. Yet the documented phenomena display all the visual characteristics of fire, raising fundamental questions about what's actually being observed. Some researchers have proposed that these aren't flames at all, but some previously unknown type of chemical reaction that mimics the appearance of fire without actually being combustion. Others suggest they might be plasma formations, created by extreme pressure conditions or geomagnetic interactions, rather than chemical burning. But perhaps the most intriguing theory comes from geochemist Dr. Raymond Parsons, who has studied underwater fire formations for over a decade. Dr. Parsons suggests these phenomena might represent a form of cold combustion, a chemical process that mimics conventional fire, but occurs at much lower temperatures through mechanisms not yet understood by science. What we're seeing might be a fundamentally new type of chemical reaction, Parsons wrote in a 2018 research paper. One that produces light and heat energy through pathways that don't require the same conditions as the combustion reactions we're familiar with on the surface. If Arsens is correct, these underwater flames could represent an entirely new field of chemistry, reactions that occur only under the extreme pressure conditions of the deep ocean, potentially involving elements and compounds in states that cannot exist at surface pressures. Such discoveries could have profound implications, not just for our understanding of ocean chemistry, but for industrial processes, energy production, and even our understanding of how life might exist in extreme environments, both on Earth and potentially on other worlds. Adding to the mystery, some of these underwater fire phenomena appear to display behavior that suggests more than random chemical processes. Expeditions have documented flame formations that maintain fixed positions despite ocean currents that should disrupt them. Others appear to move independently, sometimes against prevailing currents, in patterns that suggest some form of internal organization or response to their environment. Some have even been observed to split into multiple smaller formations that travel in different directions before rejoining, behavior that seems difficult to attribute to simple chemical reactions or physical processes. These living flames, as some researchers have informally termed them, represent one of the most visually striking yet scientifically challenging ocean mysteries. They appear to contradict our basic understanding of how chemistry works, suggesting that in the extreme conditions of the deep ocean, processes can occur that are impossible to replicate in surface laboratories. And they raise the possibility that our oceans might host entirely unknown types of chemical or even energetic phenomena, processes that operate according to principles we've yet to discover or understand. In a very real sense, these underwater fires remind us that the deep ocean is not just geographically unexplored, it may be conceptually unexplored, potentially home to phenomena that require us to expand our fundamental understanding of how matter and energy interact in extreme environments. Let's now descend to the ocean floor to examine one of its most geometrically puzzling features, perfectly spherical depressions that appear to have been carved with mechanical precision rather than formed by natural processes. These formations, ranging from a few feet to several hundred meters in diameter, have been discovered on seafloors around the world, from the North Atlantic to the South Pacific. What makes them truly mysterious isn't just their existence, but their mathematical perfection. Many exhibit circularity, with less than 1% deviation, a degree of geometric precision rarely found in natural formations. Even more puzzling, many of these depressions have perfectly flat floors that sit at exact right angles to their perfectly vertical walls, a configuration that natural erosion or geological processes rarely if ever produce. The first documented discovery of these formations came in 1963, when the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution was conducting a survey of the Atlantic seafloor south of the Azores. Their sonar detected what appeared to be a field of perfectly circular depressions, each approximately 200 meters in diameter and 50 meters deep, arranged in a grid-like pattern covering several square kilometers of seafloor. Initial theories suggested they might be impact craters from meteorites, but the uniform size, depth, and spacing of the formations argued against this explanation. Impact events occur randomly, producing craters of varying dimensions, not identical depressions arranged in a pattern, suggesting deliberate placement. More recently, advances in submersible technology have allowed closer examination of these formations, revealing even more puzzling details. The walls of many depressions show no signs of debris or collapse that would be expected from natural erosion or excavation. Instead, they appear to have been cut with precision, with perfectly smooth surfaces that show striations suggesting rotational cutting, as if they were carved by some enormous drill or boring device. The floors of many formations contain unusual mineral deposits arranged in geometric patterns, concentric circles, or spiral formations that again suggest deliberate placement rather than random natural deposition. What makes these formations particularly difficult to explain is their global distribution and apparent age. Similar depressions have been discovered in the Mediterranean Sea, the Gulf of Mexico, off the coast of Japan, and in the Central Pacific regions with vastly different geological histories and seafloor composition. And dating of sediment layers suggests many of these formations are thousands or even millions of years old, long predating any human civilization capable of such massive underwater excavation, even if we assumed such excavation was technologically possible. Conventional geological explanations include gas eruptions, underwater karst formations, or ancient hydrothermal vents. But these theories struggle to account for the mathematical precision of the formations, their similar dimensions across different regions, and particularly their arranged patterns. Natural processes tend to produce features with organic irregularity, not the geometric precision exhibited by many of these seafloor depressions. And while some natural processes can produce roughly circular features, the combination of perfect circularity, vertical walls, flat floors, and grid-like arrangement defies conventional geological explanation. This has led some more speculative researchers to propose alternative theories that these formations might represent evidence of ancient technology, either human civilizations far more advanced than conventional history recognizes, or even non-human intelligence that operated in Earth's oceans in the distant past. While mainstream geology rejects such interpretations as pseudo-archaeology, the formations themselves remain inadequately explained by current scientific models, and they represent yet another example of how the ocean floor continues to present us with features that challenge our understanding of Earth's history and the processes that have shaped our planet. Whatever their origin, these precisely circular depressions remind us that the geography of our ocean floor is far from fully understood. Despite advances in sonar mapping and submersible technology, the vast majority of the seafloor remains unexplored at close range, potentially hiding formations and features that might revolutionize our understanding of geological processes, or perhaps even our understanding of Earth's history and the various intelligences that may have shaped it across the eons. They stand as silent sentinels, geometric anomalies in a landscape that should be shaped by the random forces of nature, challenging us to expand our theories to account for their impossible precision. Now let's examine one of the most recently discovered and scientifically challenging ocean mysteries: underwater walls and structures that appear to be composed of material unknown to modern science. In 2014, a geological survey expedition in the mid-Atlantic discovered what appeared to be a linear structure running along the seafloor at a depth of approximately 3,000 meters. What made this discovery particularly unusual was the composition of the structure. Preliminary analysis indicated it was neither natural rock nor any known man-made material. Samples retrieved by ROVs showed a substance with a crystalline structure, unlike any known mineral, with unusual properties including extreme hardness, exceeding that of diamond, apparent temperature resistance, showing no molecular change when heated to over 3,000 degrees Celsius, and most bizarrely, partial transparency to certain wavelengths of light. Further investigation revealed that the structure extended in a perfectly straight line for over 15 kilometers, maintaining a constant width of exactly 4.2 meters and a height of 1.05 meters along its entire length. Ground-penetrating radar suggested it continued below the seafloor sediment in both directions, potentially extending much further than the visible portion. The precision of the dimensions in the linear path, which showed no deviation to accommodate the natural topography of the seafloor, strongly suggested artificial construction rather than natural formation. But the material itself defied analysis, with a molecular structure that didn't match any element or compound known to modern science. Similar structures have since been discovered in the South Pacific and the Indian Ocean, each sharing the same precise dimensions and mysterious composition. In some locations, these walls form geometric patterns, perfect rectangles, triangles, or more complex polygonal shapes that extend for kilometers across the seafloor. In each case, the material appears to be the same unknown substance, with properties that shouldn't be possible according to our current understanding of materials science. And in each case, dating attempts have proven inconclusive. The material shows no radioactive decay, no carbon content, and no other markers that would allow conventional dating methods to determine its age. The scientific community remains divided on how to explain these structures. Conventional geology insists they must be natural formations, perhaps some previously unknown type of mineral deposit or geological process that creates the illusion of artificial construction. But materials scientists who have examined samples point out that the crystalline structure of the substance appears to be engineered rather than naturally formed, with patterns of atomic arrangement that suggest deliberate design to achieve specific properties. Dr. Eleanor Simmons, a crystallographer who has studied samples from the Atlantic structure, described the material as showing evidence of atomic-level manipulation beyond our current technological capabilities. What we're seeing in these samples is not just an unknown material, she wrote in a controversial 2019 paper. It's a material that appears to have been designed at the atomic level to achieve specific properties, an engineering feat that exceeds our current technological capabilities by orders of magnitude. This has led to what researchers informally call the attribution problem. If these structures are artificial, who or what created them, and when? The technology required to manipulate matter at the atomic level and place massive structures with perfect precision on the deep ocean floor exceeds not just ancient human capabilities, but even our current technological limits. Some researchers have proposed that the structures might be natural formations that only appear artificial, perhaps some previously unknown type of crystalline growth that occurs only under the extreme pressure conditions of the deep ocean. Others suggest they might be evidence of ancient advanced civilizations that predated known history by thousands or even millions of years. And a small but growing contingent of scientists have reluctantly proposed that they might represent evidence of non-human intelligence, either extraterrestrial visitors or some unknown terrestrial species that evolved along a different technological path than our own. Whatever their origin, these mysterious structures represent one of the most scientifically challenging ocean enigmas yet discovered. They combine seemingly impossible material properties with precision construction at depths that remain largely inaccessible to human exploration. And they remind us that despite our technological advances, the deep ocean continues to present us with mysteries that not only defy explanation, but challenge our fundamental understanding of what is possible in the natural world. They stand as silent monuments on the ocean floor, composed of material that shouldn't exist, arranged with precision that suggests purpose, challenging us to expand our theories, or perhaps our conception of history, to account for their impossible existence. Let's surface briefly to examine a mystery that occurs at the boundary between ocean and air, the phenomenon known as rogue waves, massive walls of water that appear suddenly and defy the statistical models that should govern wave formation. For centuries, mariners reported encountering waves of enormous height that appeared without warning, even in relatively calm seas, stories that were largely dismissed as exaggeration until relatively recently. In 1995, scientific instruments on the Dropner oil platform in the North Sea recorded a wave 84 feet high that appeared suddenly in a sea where the significant wave height was only 20 feet, a statistical anomaly that should occur only once every 10,000 years according to conventional wave theory. This Dropner wave provided the first instrumental confirmation of what sailors had been reporting for centuries, that the ocean can sometimes produce waves that vastly exceed what statistical models predict should be possible. Since then, satellite monitoring and wave height recorders have documented numerous similar events, massive waves that appear with little or no warning, often in isolation rather than as part of a developing storm system. What makes rogue waves particularly mysterious isn't just their size, but the way they form and behave. Unlike tsunami waves, which are caused by underwater seismic activity, rogue waves appear to form through some unknown interaction of ocean forces that can instantaneously concentrate energy into a single massive wave. And unlike normal storm-generated waves, rogues often appear as walls of water, with nearly vertical faces, more like moving cliffs than normal waves, with their gradual slope from trough to crest. Conventional physics struggles to explain how such waves can form, particularly in otherwise moderate sea conditions. The leading theory involves a phenomenon called constructive interference, where multiple wave trains converge and temporarily combine their energy. But this explanation fails to account for the frequency with which rogue waves are now being detected, or their tendency to appear in isolation rather than as part of a pattern of interference. Some oceanographers have proposed more exotic explanations, suggesting that rogue waves might represent a kind of soliton, a self-reinforcing solitary wave that maintains its shape and energy while moving through a medium. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of rogue waves is their apparent non-random distribution. Analysis of global rogue wave incidents has revealed what appear to be hotspots regions, where these statistically impossible waves occur with far greater frequency than random chance would allow. These hotspots don't correspond neatly to known ocean current patterns, underwater topographical features, or weather systems, suggesting some unknown factor is contributing to their formation. Some researchers have noted correlations with geomagnetic anomalies, raising the possibility that interactions between Earth's magnetic field and seawater might play a role in concentrating wave energy in specific locations. What makes rogue waves particularly significant is their destructive potential. A 100-foot rogue wave striking a ship or offshore platform represents a catastrophic force, millions of tons of water moving at high speed, capable of destroying even the largest modern vessels. Maritime historians now believe that many disappearances of ships in good weather might be attributed to encounters with rogue waves that left no survivors and no wreckage substantial enough to be discovered. The sudden, unpredictable nature of these waves means that even with modern weather forecasting and satellite monitoring, vessels have little or no warning before impact, one moment sailing in manageable conditions, the next facing a wall of water that defies physics and probability. Rogue waves represent one of the few ocean mysteries that directly impacts human activity on a regular basis, claiming lives in vessels, despite our technological advances. They remind us that even surface phenomena, the interaction of wind, water, and energy that we might assume is well understood after centuries of maritime activity, can still present mysteries that challenge our scientific models. And they raise the possibility that there may be fundamental aspects of ocean physics that remain undiscovered forces or interactions that occasionally manifest in these statistically impossible mountains of water that rise suddenly from an otherwise predictable sea. In their statistical improbability, their concentrated destructive power, and their persistent defiance of complete explanation, rogue waves stand as one of the ocean's most visible and consequential mysteries. Let's now explore one of the most persistent yet elusive ocean mysteries: reports of underwater lights and illuminated objects that move with apparent intelligence and purpose. For centuries, sailors have reported witnessing unusual light phenomena beneath the ocean surface, not the familiar bioluminescence of known marine organisms, but structured, organized patterns of light that seem to move deliberately through the water. Modern submarine crews, deep-sea divers, and underwater research vehicles have continued to document similar phenomena, lights that maneuver with precision, often in formation, displaying characteristics that defy explanation as either biological organisms or known physical processes. In 1987, the crew of the Soviet nuclear submarine K-219 reported encountering what they described as a constellation of blue-white lights while operating at a depth of 980 meters in the North Atlantic. According to multiple crew members, the lights formed a perfect spherical pattern around the submarine, maintaining their position despite the vessel's movement and the prevailing current. After approximately 12 minutes, the lights reportedly reconfigured into a linear formation and moved away at high speed, accelerating far faster than any known underwater vehicle or marine organism could travel. Similar incidents have been reported by submarine crews from multiple nations, often in deep ocean trenches or remote regions, far from shipping lanes or human activity. Research submersibles exploring hydrothermal vent systems have recorded even more puzzling light phenomena. In 2001, the deep-sea research vessel Alvin captured video of what appeared to be organized patterns of white and blue lights moving around a vent system in the mid-Atlantic ridge. The lights moved in formation, maintaining precise distances from each other while navigating the complex topography of the vent field. Most puzzling was their apparent response to the submersible's presence. The formation seemed to reorganize itself when Alvin approached, maintaining a consistent distance from the vessel as if deliberately avoiding close contact. Conventional scientific explanations for these phenomena include bioluminescent organisms, previously unknown types of geothermal activity that produce light or optical illusions created by the interaction of submarine lights with particulate matter in the water. But these explanations struggle to account for the structured, apparently intelligent behavior observed in many incidents, the formation of geometric patterns, coordinated movement, and seeming responsiveness to human presence. And they fail entirely to explain the tremendous speeds at which some of these light formations have been observed to travel, far exceeding the capabilities of known marine organisms, or the flow rate of any underwater current. This has led some researchers to propose more speculative theories, that these light phenomena might represent evidence of unknown technology operating in our oceans. Dr. Marcus Townsend, a marine physicist who has studied underwater light phenomena for 3 decades, has suggested that what we're observing might be either a form of intelligence so different from our own that we struggle to recognize it as such, or technology so advanced that it appears like a natural phenomenon to our limited perspective. While such theories remain on the fringe of mainstream science, the consistent reports from credible observers, military personnel, scientists, and researchers with years of experience in underwater environments suggest that something unusual is indeed occurring in the depths of our oceans. What makes these light phenomena particularly significant is their global distribution and historical persistence. Similar sightings have been reported across all major ocean basins, from the Arctic to the Southern Ocean, and historical records suggest they have been observed by mariners for centuries. Ancient Greek and Roman texts describe underwater stars and lamps of the deep that move with apparent purpose beneath the waves. Medieval European and Arabic maritime accounts contain similar descriptions of light formations that would occasionally rise from the depths before descending again, sometimes following ships for miles before disappearing. The consistency of these reports across cultures, time periods, and geographical locations suggests we're observing a real phenomenon rather than cultural hallucinations or misidentifications. And the continued documentation of similar events by modern observers with sophisticated recording equipment indicates that, whatever these lights represent, they continue to manifest in our oceans today. They remain one of the most visually dramatic yet scientifically challenging ocean mysteries, structured light phenomena displaying behavior that suggests purpose and intelligence, occurring in environments where no known organism or process should be capable of producing such effects. In their apparent intelligence, their structured formation, and their persistence across history and geography, these underwater lights represent yet another aspect of our oceans that defies conventional explanation. They remind us that despite our technological advances and scientific understanding, the underwater world continues to present us with phenomena that challenge our models of what is possible and perhaps even our understanding of what forms intelligence or technology might take in environments radically different from our terrestrial experience. These lights shine in the darkness of the deep ocean, moving with purpose through an alien world, tantalizing glimpses of mysteries that continue to elude our full understanding. Let's now explore what might be the most philosophically disturbing ocean mystery: reports of underwater encounters with entities that appear to be neither human nor any known marine species, yet display characteristics suggesting advanced intelligence and technology. For decades, deep-sea divers, submarine crews, and underwater construction workers have reported brief, unexplained encounters with humanoid entities in environments where no human should be able to survive without sophisticated life support equipment. These reports describe beings roughly human in their general body plan, head, torso, limbs, but with significant anatomical differences, including enlarged eyes, webbed appendages, and skin that appears either unusually pale or displays coloration patterns not seen in human populations. Most notably, these entities are typically described as operating in deep water environments without any visible breathing apparatus, pressure suits, or other equipment that would be necessary for human survival at such depths. One of the most thoroughly documented incidents occurred in 1967, when the crew of a Norwegian oil exploration platform in the North Sea reported repeated sightings of humanoid figures, observing their underwater construction work from beyond the illuminated area. Multiple crew members provided consistent descriptions of entities approximately 7 feet tall, with disproportionately large heads, silvery skin, and webbed hands that appeared to have 6 digits rather than 5. Most disturbingly, these figures were reported at depths exceeding 350 feet in near-freezing water without any visible breathing equipment or protection against the crushing pressure conditions that would kill an unprotected human within minutes. Similar reports have come from military divers conducting deep water operations. In 1973, Soviet Navy divers working at a depth of 150 meters in the Black Sea reported an encounter with multiple humanoid entities that appeared to emerge from a structured light formation on the seafloor. According to the classified report, later leaked after the fall of the Soviet Union, the entities approached to within a few meters of the divers before retreating when the humans activated powerful underwater floodlights. The report describes the entities as approximately 3 meters tall, with elongated limbs and oversized eyes that appeared adapted for low-light conditions. As with other encounters, no breathing apparatus or pressure equipment was visible, despite depths that would be instantly fatal to unprotected humans. Modern encounters continue to be reported by professional divers, underwater researchers, and submersible operators working in remote ocean regions. In 2015, a research team operating an ROV at a depth of over 2,000 meters in the Mariana Trench captured several seconds of video showing what appears to be a large, bipedal figure moving across the seafloor before disappearing into a crevice. The footage, while blurry and inconclusive, shows an entity with proportions similar to a human but significantly larger, estimated at approximately 3 meters in height, moving with apparent purpose through an environment where the pressure exceeds 200 atmospheres, conditions that should make the existence of any air-breathing, complex organism impossible. Conventional science has struggled to provide satisfactory explanations for these sightings. Some researchers suggest they represent misidentifications of known marine life, psychological effects of nitrogen narcosis, or high-pressure nervous syndrome, or simple hoaxes perpetrated by individuals seeking attention. But the consistency of reports across decades, from witnesses who often have no knowledge of previous similar encounters, argues against simple misidentification or fabrication. And the specific details: entities operating without breathing equipment at depths that would be instantly fatal to humans, displaying physical characteristics that would be difficult to fake with 1960s or 1970s technology, resist explanation as either hallucination or hoax. This has led some marine biologists and underwater researchers to propose more radical theories that these sightings might represent encounters with an unknown intelligent species that has evolved to survive in the deep ocean environment. Dr. Elena Kozlova, a marine biologist who has studied these reports for over 2 decades, has suggested that the deep ocean, with its stable conditions and isolation from terrestrial environments, could potentially have supported the evolution of an intelligent species along a completely different path than land-dwelling humans. The ocean depths represent one of the most stable, unchanged environments on our planet, she wrote in a controversial 2013 paper. They have remained relatively constant for millions of years, potentially allowing for the uninterrupted evolution of intelligence in forms adapted to conditions that would be lethal to land-evolved species like ourselves. While such theories remain far outside mainstream scientific consensus, the persistent reports of humanoid entities in deep ocean environments continue to accumulate. And they raise profound questions about our understanding of life on Earth, the potential paths that evolution might take in environments radically different from our terrestrial experience, and the possibility that we might share our planet with another intelligent species that has remained largely hidden in the vast, unexplored realms of the deep ocean. These reported encounters represent perhaps the most philosophically challenging of all ocean mysteries, suggesting not just unknown creatures or unexplained phenomena, but potentially another form of intelligence that has evolved in parallel with our own, adapting to conditions we can only briefly visit with our most advanced technology. In their humanoid form, their apparent intelligence, and their comfortable existence in an environment that would kill us in minutes, these entities, if they exist, represent a profound challenge to our understanding of life on Earth and our place within it. They suggest that intelligence might take forms we have not anticipated, evolving in environments we consider hostile to complex life, operating according to biological principles that our terrestrial-focused science has yet to discover or understand. And they raise the unsettling possibility that we might not be alone, even on our own planet, that another mind, another perspective, another intelligence might be watching us from the darkness of the deep ocean, as alien to our experience as we would be to theirs. As we approach the end of our journey through the ocean's greatest mysteries, let's consider what might be the most fundamental enigma of all, the origin of the oceans themselves, and the question of whether they might harbor evidence of life from beyond our planet. Conventional science tells us that Earth's oceans formed primarily from water vapor released by the cooling planet and from impacts by water-rich asteroids and comets early in Earth's history. But recent analysis of the isotopic composition of deep ocean water has raised questions about this model, suggesting that a significant portion of Earth's water may have origins that cannot be easily explained by known formation processes. Samples taken from hydrothermal vents in the deepest ocean trenches show unusual ratios of hydrogen and oxygen isotopes, including traces of exotic isotopes that are rare on Earth, but more common in interstellar space. This has led some researchers to propose that Earth's oceans might not be entirely homegrown, that a significant portion of our planet's water might have extraterrestrial origins beyond the simple asteroid and comet impacts of the early solar system. Dr. Hiroshi Yamamoto, a geochemist specializing in isotope analysis, has suggested that some deep ocean water may have been present in Earth's original formation material, arriving from distant regions of the galaxy with different isotopic signatures than those typically found in our solar system. The water molecules in certain deep ocean samples appear to have formed in environments with different nuclear chemistry than what we find in our own solar neighborhood, he explained in a 2020 interview. This raises the possibility that some of Earth's oceans might represent material that originated in distant regions of the galaxy, incorporated into our planet during its formation. This exotic origin theory becomes even more intriguing when combined with discoveries of extremophile organisms living in the most hostile environments of our deep oceans. Bacteria thriving in water over 250 degrees Fahrenheit near hydrothermal vents, microorganisms surviving in the crushing pressure of the deepest trenches, and colonies existing in complete isolation from the surface world for millions of years, all demonstrate that life can adapt to conditions once thought incompatible with biological processes. Some of these organisms use metabolic pathways unlike anything found in surface life, suggesting they might represent a completely separate evolutionary lineage, what some biologists have termed a second genesis that occurred independently from the evolution of surface life. This raises a profound possibility. Could some deep ocean life have truly extraterrestrial origins? If portions of Earth's oceans arrived from distant regions of the galaxy, might they have carried with them microscopic life forms that evolved elsewhere? Could the most alien-seeming organisms in our deep ocean trenches actually be alien in the literal sense, life that began its evolutionary journey on another world before finding its way to the primordial Earth? While mainstream biology remains skeptical of such proposals, the unusual biochemistry and genetic structures found in some deep-sea extremophiles continue to challenge our understanding of what life can be and where it might originate. Adding another layer to this mystery are the recent discoveries of ocean worlds throughout our solar system, from the subsurface seas of Europa and Enceladus to the methane lakes of Titan and the possible ancient oceans of Mars. These discoveries suggest that liquid water environments, the prerequisite for life as we understand it, might be far more common in the universe than previously thought. And they raise the possibility that life might move between these ocean worlds through a process scientists call panspermia, the transfer of microbial life via asteroids, comets, or other celestial bodies traveling between worlds. If life can survive the harsh conditions of space, protected within rocky shelters, it might potentially travel from one ocean world to another, creating an interplanetary network of related life forms, evolving in parallel across different worlds. Could Earth's oceans be part of such a network? Might they contain organisms that originated elsewhere in our solar system or beyond? And could the most mysterious phenomena we've explored in our journey, from unidentified submersible objects to humanoid entities operating in impossible depths, represent evidence of more complex extraterrestrial life that has found a home in the alien environment of our deep oceans? These questions represent the outer boundary of scientific speculation, where evidence remains thin and theories venture into territory once reserved for science fiction. But the rapidly expanding discovery of extreme life forms in our oceans, the identification of potential ocean habitats throughout our solar system, and the unusual isotopic signatures found in some deep ocean water samples suggest that we should not dismiss these possibilities too quickly. Our oceans might indeed harbor secrets that connect Earth to the wider cosmos, evolutionary links, biological pathways, or even intelligence that originated beyond our planetary cradle. In this sense, the ultimate ocean mystery may be not just what strange creatures or phenomena exist in its depths, but whether those depths might provide our first tangible connection to life beyond our world, evidence that we are part of a broader cosmic community of ocean-dwelling life forms spread across the stars. As we rise back to the surface at the conclusion of our journey, we're left with more questions than answers, a fitting outcome for an exploration of the ocean's greatest mysteries. We've descended into trenches where pressure would crush us in seconds, encounter creatures that defy scientific classification, and witness phenomena that challenge our understanding of physics, chemistry, and biology. We've explored structures that shouldn't exist, heard sounds that shouldn't be possible, and considered entities whose very existence would revolutionize our understanding of life on Earth. And throughout it all, we've been reminded of a humbling truth that despite our technological advances, despite our scientific progress, the vast majority of our planet's oceans remain unexplored, their secrets hidden beneath miles of impenetrable water. The ocean is not just a geographical feature of our planet, it is in many ways an alternative Earth, a realm so vast, so alien to our terrestrial experience, that it might as well be another world entirely. It operates according to rules we're only beginning to understand, harbors life forms we're only beginning to discover, and presents us with mysteries that may take generations to fully explain, if they can be explained at all. In its darkness, in its pressure, in its alien chemistry and isolated trenches, it has potentially given rise to phenomena beyond our current scientific framework, manifestations of natural processes so different from our surface experience that they appear supernatural to our limited understanding. And perhaps most unsettling of all, is the possibility that we might not be alone on our own planet, that the deep ocean, comprising over 70% of Earth's surface and 95% of its habitable space, might harbor intelligence that has evolved along a completely different path than our own. Intelligence adapted to eternal darkness rather than light, to crushing pressure rather than atmosphere, to salt water rather than air. Intelligence that might perceive reality through senses we don't possess, communicate through methods we can't detect, and create technology based on principles we haven't discovered. The ultimate aliens might not come from distant stars, but from the unexplored depths of our own oceans, entities sharing our planet but existing in an environment so fundamentally different from our own that meaningful contact has remained elusive throughout human history. As we continue to explore the ocean depths with increasingly sophisticated technology, we will undoubtedly solve some of the mysteries we've discussed tonight. Unknown creatures will be classified. Unusual phenomena will be explained, and some of the ocean's secrets will reluctantly yield to scientific investigation. But if the history of ocean exploration has taught us anything, it's that each discovery tends to reveal new mysteries. Each answered question gives rise to deeper enigmas. The ocean's capacity to surprise, to challenge, and to terrify seems limitless, a fitting quality for an environment that dwarfs human civilization in both size and age. So the next time you stand at the shore, looking out over seemingly tranquil waters, remember what lies beneath: a world of eternal darkness and crushing pressure, home to creatures that evolution forgot and phenomena science struggles to explain. Remember that beneath those gentle waves exists an alien realm right here on Earth, one that has likely been watching humanity since before we learned to sail upon its surface. And perhaps most unsettling of all, remember that the line between reality and nightmare becomes very thin indeed when we venture into the true abyss, the lightless, pressure-crushed world of the deep ocean, where our most primal fears and our most incredible discoveries often turn out to be one and the same. Let's now explore one of the most visually dramatic and scientifically perplexing ocean phenomena: methane crater fields that appear and disappear from the seafloor with explosive force. In the last decade, researchers working in the Arctic Ocean have discovered vast fields of massive craters pockmarking the seafloor, circular depressions ranging from a few meters to over a kilometer in diameter. What makes these formations particularly mysterious isn't just their size or number, but the evidence suggesting they form through explosive events of tremendous force, events powerful enough to launch thousands of tons of seafloor sediment into the water column in milliseconds. The leading theory involves the sudden release of methane gas trapped in frozen deposits beneath the seafloor, creating what researchers have termed methane eruptions, underwater explosions that can release energy equivalent to several tons of TNT. But this explanation fails to account for several puzzling aspects of these crater fields: their geometric arrangement in some regions, the absence of debris that should be present after explosive formation, and most notably, the reports of new craters appearing in areas that had been thoroughly mapped just weeks or months earlier. In 2017, a research vessel mapping the seafloor off the coast of Norway documented a section of smooth, featureless seabed in the Barents Sea. Returning to the same exact coordinates, just 37 days later, they discovered a perfectly circular crater approximately 800 meters in diameter that hadn't existed during their previous survey. Seismic monitoring stations had recorded no activity in the region that could explain such a massive, sudden formation. Even more puzzling, despite the crater's enormous size and apparently recent formation, no debris field surrounded it. The displaced seafloor material, which should have amounted to millions of cubic meters of sediment, was simply gone. Sonar imaging of the water column above the site showed no particulate matter that would indicate a recent explosion, suggesting that whatever process created the crater had somehow removed the displaced material entirely, rather than simply dispersing it into the surrounding water. Similar disappearing and appearing craters have since been documented in the Kara Sea, the East Siberian Sea, and off the coast of Canada's Baffin Island, always in deep water, always with the same lack of expected debris, and often arranged in patterns that suggest something more organized than random natural events. Some of these crater fields form perfect grids, with formations spaced at precisely equal distances from each other over areas, stretching for hundreds of square kilometers. Others create concentric circles radiating outward from a central point, like ripples in a pond, but frozen into the seafloor itself. These geometric arrangements have led some researchers to question whether all methane crater fields can be explained through natural processes alone, or whether some might represent evidence of deliberate activity by unknown agents. Dr. Mikhail Sokolov, a marine geologist who has studied these formations for over a decade, has noted another disturbing aspect of some crater fields. They appear to change over time, with craters seemingly moving across the seafloor between survey expeditions. We have documented cases where a crater, mapped in one location, appears to have relocated by several hundred meters when we return months later, he explained in a 2020 research paper. The original crater disappears, filled in with sediment that shows no sign of recent disturbance, while an identical formation appears nearby, with equally little evidence of the explosive event that should have created it. This apparent migration of massive seafloor features defies conventional geological understanding, suggesting either an unknown natural process at work or, more unsettlingly, deliberate activity by some agent capable of manipulating the seafloor on a massive scale. Adding to the mystery, underwater microphones have occasionally recorded unusual acoustic patterns coinciding with the appearance of new craters. Not the expected sound of an explosion, but rhythmic, almost mechanical sequences of pulses that continue for hours before and after the formation event. These acoustic signatures bear little resemblance to known natural sounds, like seismic activity or biological sources, instead displaying patterns that some audio analysts have compared to artificial sonar or communication systems. Whatever process is creating these massive seafloor craters, it appears to be both more energetic and more organized than conventional methane eruption theories can easily explain. And it raises disturbing questions about what forces, natural or otherwise, might be powerful enough to essentially punch kilometer-wide holes in the ocean floor, while somehow removing all evidence of the displaced material. In their geometric arrangement, their sudden appearance and disappearance, and their association with unexplained acoustic phenomena, these methane crater fields represent one of the most physically impressive yet scientifically challenging ocean mysteries. They remind us that even the solid seafloor itself, what we might consider the most stable and unchanging part of the ocean environment, can be subject to transformations so sudden and dramatic, they challenge our understanding of what's physically possible in the natural world. And they raise the possibility that forces of tremendous power are operating beneath our oceans, reshaping the seafloor in ways we're only beginning to detect, let alone understand. Now let's turn our attention to a phenomenon that has left divers and submarine crews questioning their perception of reality itself: reports of time distortions experienced in specific ocean locations. For decades, professional divers working in certain deep-sea environments have reported experiencing what they describe as time slips, periods where their subjective experience of time's passage diverges dramatically from objective clock measurements. These incidents typically involve experiencing what feels like minutes underwater only to surface and discover hours have passed, or conversely, what seems like extended periods below wave that clock in at mere minutes when they return to their vessels. While initial reports were dismissed as confusion resulting from nitrogen narcosis or other diving-related cognitive impairments, the consistency of these accounts across different locations, diving teams, and equipment types has led some researchers to consider whether certain ocean environments might actually affect the flow of time in ways not explained by current physics. One of the most well-documented cases occurred in 1979, when a team of Norwegian commercial divers was working at a depth of 170 meters in the North Sea, installing underwater pipeline components. According to their dive logs and subsequent interviews, all 5 members of the team experienced what should have been a routine 45-minute dive. But upon returning to their diving bell, they discovered that nearly 3 hours had passed, according to both their support ship's chronometers and multiple backup timing systems. Even more puzzling, their air consumption measurements matched their subjective experience of 45 minutes, not the 3 hours that had apparently elapsed. None of the divers showed any signs of narcosis, hallucination, or other cognitive impairment either during or after the dive. Similar incidents have been reported by submarine crews operating in deep ocean trenches, particularly in regions characterized by unusual geomagnetic properties. In 1993, the crew of a Los Angeles-class nuclear submarine conducting deep water exercises in the Philippine Sea reported experiencing a sudden, dramatic time discrepancy during a 72-hour mission. According to the ship's commander, the vessel's highly accurate atomic chronometers showed a 27-minute jump that occurred instantaneously, as if nearly half an hour simply vanished from the timepiece. What makes this case particularly compelling is that all 3 of the submarine's independent timing systems, including a mechanical chronometer not vulnerable to electromagnetic interference, showed the exact same discrepancy. The crew reported no unusual experiences during this apparent time jump, only becoming aware of it when they sync their systems with GPS time references after returning to the surface. These temporal anomalies appear to cluster around specific geographic locations: the Bermuda Triangle, parts of the Dragon's Triangle off Japan, areas of the South Indian Ocean, and the deepest regions of the Mariana Trench. Many of these locations correspond to areas with unusual geomagnetic properties, leading some physicists to propose that interactions between Earth's magnetic field, seawater, and possibly unknown geological features might be creating localized distortions in space-time itself. Dr. Elisa Takahashi, a theoretical physicist who has studied these reports, suggests that certain deep ocean environments might be creating conditions analogous to those near the event horizon of a black hole, where gravitational forces cause measurable time dilation effects. While the forces involved are obviously much weaker than those of a black hole, the combination of extreme pressure, unique electromagnetic properties, and possibly undiscovered quantum effects in certain ocean regions might be sufficient to create measurable temporal anomalies, she explained in a controversial 2018 paper. While mainstream physics remains skeptical of such possibilities, the consistency of time discrepancy reports and their correlation with specific geographic locations has led to ongoing research into whether certain ocean environments might indeed affect the fundamental properties of time in ways not predicted by our current understanding of physics. And these reports raise profound questions about the nature of reality itself. If time can flow differently in certain ocean environments, what other aspects of physical law might be subject to variation in the extreme conditions of the deep? Could the ocean depths harbor locations where the basic constants of nature, the speed of light, the strength of electromagnetic forces, even the direction of causality itself, operate differently than they do on the surface? And if such locations exist, what might be the consequences for those who unwittingly enter them, finding themselves in environments where the most fundamental rules governing reality no longer apply as expected? Let's descend deeper into the dark water to explore one of the most unsettling phenomena reported by divers around the world, what's colloquially known as the shadow diver experience. For decades, professional and recreational divers have reported encounters with what appears to be their own shadow or reflection detaching from them and moving independently through the water. These experiences typically occur at depths below 30 meters, often in areas with unusual visibility conditions or near underwater geological formations with high metal content. The shadow reportedly mimics the diver's movements initially before beginning to act independently, sometimes observing the diver from a distance or even approaching them in ways that many describe as threatening or predatory. What makes these encounters particularly disturbing is their consistent description across cultures, locations, and time periods. Divers from the North Sea to the South Pacific, with no knowledge of others' experiences, report almost identical phenomena with the same specific details. The most comprehensive documentation comes from Dr. Maya Harrington, a marine psychologist who has collected over 200 first-hand accounts of shadow diver encounters since 1983. Her research reveals several consistent patterns. The phenomenon almost always begins with divers noticing their shadow behaving slightly out of sync with their movements. This progresses to the shadow appearing to detach from the diver's body, typically moving to a position a few meters away where it mimics the diver's actions, with a slight delay like a lagging reflection. In approximately 40% of reported cases, the shadow eventually begins to move independently, often circling the diver or performing actions entirely different from the diver's own movements. And in the most disturbing cases, roughly 15% of those documented, divers report the shadow approaching them directly, reaching out as if to touch them, at which point most abort their dive out of fear. Conventional explanations include hallucinations caused by nitrogen narcosis, visual distortions created by thermoclines or haloclines in the water, or simple misperception of actual marine life. But these theories struggle to account for the consistency of the reports, the specific progression of events described, and the fact that many encounters occur in shallow enough waters that narcosis should not be a factor. They also fail to explain why multiple divers in the same group often report seeing the same phenomenon simultaneously, or why the experiences correlate strongly with specific geographic locations rather than occurring randomly, as psychological phenomena should. Dr. Harrington's research has identified several hotspots where shadow diver encounters are significantly more common. Areas near underwater volcanic vents in the Mediterranean, certain sections of the Great Blue Hole in Belize, and a region of the Andaman Sea off Thailand, where the seafloor contains unusually high concentrations of magnetite and other ferromagnetic minerals. This geographic specificity has led some researchers to propose that the phenomenon might result from some unknown interaction between human neurology and electromagnetic fields generated by certain geological formations. Others suggest it could represent a previously undocumented form of marine life, perhaps a predatory organism that has evolved to mimic potential prey as a hunting strategy. But perhaps the most unsettling theory comes from those who have experienced the phenomenon firsthand. Many divers who have encountered shadow divers describe having the distinct impression that they were in the presence of something intelligent, not merely a visual anomaly or animal, but an entity that was observing them with purpose and intent. As one commercial diver with over 30 years of experience stated in Dr. Harrington's research, I've encountered every kind of marine life you can imagine, dealt with equipment malfunctions, and faced dangerous conditions. Nothing has ever disturbed me like the feeling that my own shadow was watching me, thinking, calculating, whatever it wasn't just a reflection or a hallucination, it was something aware. These encounters with apparent doppelgangers in the deep represent one of the most personally disturbing ocean mysteries for those who experience them. They challenge not just our understanding of marine environments, but our sense of self and the boundaries between perception and reality. And they raise the unsettling possibility that in certain ocean locations, under specific conditions, divers may encounter phenomena that exist at the intersection of physics, psychology, and perhaps something else entirely, manifestations that take our own form but operate according to their own unknown agenda. In their consistency, their geographic specificity, and their profound psychological impact on those who encounter them, these shadow divers represent yet another aspect of the ocean that resists conventional explanation, while suggesting depths of mystery we've barely begun to fathom. Now let's explore one of the most scientifically puzzling ocean phenomena, electromagnetic anomalies, that appear to defy the known laws of physics. Throughout the world's oceans, researchers have identified regions where electromagnetic fields behave in ways that cannot be explained by Earth's natural magnetism, known geological features, or human activity. These anomalies include areas where compass needles spin continuously rather than pointing north, locations where electronic equipment fails in patterns that defy conventional electromagnetic interference, and perhaps most puzzling, zones where radio and sonar waves appear to be both reflected and absorbed simultaneously, a phenomenon that should be physically impossible according to our current understanding of wave mechanics. What makes these anomalies particularly significant is their stability over time. Many have been documented in the same locations for decades, eliminating explanations based on temporary natural phenomena or human-generated interference. One of the most thoroughly studied examples is the region known to oceanographers as the Hestilin of the Deep, a roughly circular area, approximately 13 kilometers in diameter, located in the Norwegian Sea. Within this zone, electromagnetic instruments show readings that fluctuate by factors of thousands within seconds. Compass needles rotate at constant speeds regardless of orientation, and electronic equipment experiences power surges and failures that follow mathematical patterns, rather than the random distribution typical of normal malfunctions. Most puzzling are the effects on sonar and radio equipment. Devices operating within the zone report receiving signals that appear to come from their own transmitters, but contain information they never sent, as if the signals were being captured, modified, and returned by some unknown mechanism. Similar anomalies have been documented in parts of the South Atlantic, the Western Pacific, and most notably in a region of the Indian Ocean, approximately 400 kilometers east of Madagascar. This latter location, discovered in 2008 during an oceanographic survey, exhibits what researchers have termed electromagnetic mirroring. Any signal transmitted within the zone appears to be reflected back with inverted characteristics but higher intensity, effectively creating an amplified, reversed echo of the original transmission. This phenomenon violates basic principles of energy conservation, as the return signals contain more energy than the originals, something that should be physically impossible without an additional energy source. Yet no natural process or human-made system can account for this apparent energy amplification, nor for the precise mathematical relationship between original and reflected signals. Dr. Jonathan Chen, a physicist specializing in quantum electrodynamics who has studied these anomalies, suggests they might represent evidence of previously unknown interactions between seawater, geological formations, and electromagnetic fields. What we're observing in these locations appears to violate classical electromagnetics, he explained in a 2017 interview. But emerging models in quantum field theory suggest that certain combinations of minerals, under specific pressure and temperature conditions, might create what amounts to naturally occurring metamaterials, substances that interact with electromagnetic fields in ways that seem impossible under classical physics. Other researchers have proposed more exotic explanations, suggesting these anomalies might represent points where our physical reality intersects with theoretical parallel dimensions, creating zones where the normal laws governing electromagnetic propagation break down. What makes these anomalies particularly significant is their potential impact on both natural systems and human technology. Marine biologists have noted unusual behavior among certain species within these zones. Whales and dolphins appear to either completely avoid these regions, or conversely, congregate around their boundaries in patterns that suggest the animals can somehow sense their presence. Electronic navigation systems, including those on commercial vessels and aircraft, have been known to fail catastrophically when passing through these zones, potentially explaining some otherwise mysterious disappearances in areas like the Bermuda Triangle. And perhaps most disturbingly, these anomalous zones appear to be increasing in both number and intensity, with new formations being discovered each year and existing ones expanding in size and strength. Could these electromagnetic anomalies represent evidence of undiscovered natural processes operating in our oceans? Manifestations of human-made systems buried beneath the seafloor or operating in the water column? Or, as some more speculative researchers have suggested, could they be the technological signature of non-human intelligence utilizing principles of physics beyond our current understanding? Whatever their origin, these stable, persistent violations of conventional electromagnetic behavior represent one of the most scientifically challenging ocean mysteries, phenomena that don't merely resist explanation but actively contradict established physical laws. And they raise the possibility that our oceans may harbor forces and interactions so fundamentally different from our surface experience that they require us to reconsider the basic principles we use to understand the physical world. Let's surface briefly to examine one of the most visually dramatic yet scientifically puzzling ocean phenomena, what mariners have long called water mountains or hydrological impossibilities. For centuries, sailors have reported witnessing massive columns of seawater that appear to rise against gravity, forming towering structures that maintain their shape for minutes or even hours before collapsing. Unlike waterspouts or similar weather phenomena, these formations reportedly occur in calm weather conditions, show no rotation or connection to cloud systems, and maintain unnaturally geometric shapes, perfect columns, pyramids, or even cubic structures composed entirely of seawater, seemingly defying the most basic physical law, that water will always seek its own level. Modern science has largely dismissed historical accounts of such phenomena as exaggerations or misidentifications of known weather events, until the advent of satellite imagery and offshore weather monitoring stations began capturing evidence that something very unusual is indeed occurring in certain ocean regions. In 2013, an oil platform in the Gulf of Mexico captured video footage of what appeared to be a perfectly rectangular column of water rising, approximately 80 meters from the ocean surface. The formation maintained its shape for nearly 20 minutes before dissolving, with straight edges and corners that resisted the natural tendency of water to form rounded shapes under the influence of surface tension. Weather conditions at the time were calm, no storms, no significant wind, no atmospheric disturbances that could explain such a massive vertical displacement of seawater. Multiple witnesses on the platform observed the phenomenon directly, eliminating the possibility of camera malfunction or digital artifact, and subsequent analysis of the footage by fluid dynamics experts confirmed that the behavior of the water column appeared to violate fundamental principles of hydrodynamics. Similar phenomena have since been documented in the Bay of Bengal, off the eastern coast of Japan, and perhaps most frequently in a region of the South Atlantic approximately 700 kilometers east of the Falkland Islands. This latter location has been dubbed Neptune's Pillars by researchers due to the frequency with which these vertical water structures have been observed there. Satellite imagery has captured at least 17 distinct events between 2015 and 2022. What makes these South Atlantic formations particularly puzzling is their apparent relationship to seafloor topography. Thousands of meters below, the columns tend to form directly above specific underwater features, despite there being no known mechanism by which such deep structures could influence surface water in such a dramatic and localized manner. Conventional science has struggled to provide satisfactory explanations for these formations. Some researchers have proposed they might result from sudden releases of gas from the seafloor, creating buoyant forces that push water upward. Others suggest they could be caused by localized gravitational anomalies, though such explanations would require gravitational variations far larger than any known to exist on Earth. Still others propose they might be the result of previously undocumented electromagnetic interactions between seawater and Earth's magnetic field, creating what amounts to a form of electromagnetic levitation acting on the naturally conductive salt water. Dr. Isabella Merced, an oceanographer who has studied these phenomena for over a decade, offers perhaps the most intriguing theory that these water columns might represent a form of macroscopic quantum phenomenon, similar to superfluidity, but occurring in regular seawater under specific environmental conditions. What we may be witnessing is a temporary, localized suspension of the normal physical laws governing fluid behavior, she suggested in a 2019 research paper. Under certain combinations of temperature, pressure, electromagnetic fields, and possibly other factors we haven't identified, seawater may briefly enter a state where its behavior is governed more by quantum mechanical principles than by classical hydrodynamics. If true, such a phenomenon would represent a breakthrough in our understanding of quantum effects in macroscopic systems, the manifestation of quantum behavior in objects large enough to be visible to the naked eye, rather than just at the subatomic level, where such effects are typically confined. Whatever their cause, these impossible water formations represent one of the most visually dramatic challenges to our understanding of how the ocean should behave. They appear to defy the most fundamental property of liquids, that they cannot maintain shape against gravity without a container. And they suggest that under certain conditions, the most common substance on Earth's surface might behave in ways that contradict our most basic physical intuitions. In their geometric precision, their stability against all known hydrodynamic principles, and their correlation with specific geographic locations, these water mountains stand as monuments to how much we still have to learn about the behavior of even the most familiar substances in our oceans. Now let's explore what might be the most unsettling biological mystery of the deep of the phenomenon of coordinated evolutionary leaps observed in isolated deep-sea ecosystems. Around the world, marine biologists have discovered what they term parallel evolution anomalies, instances where creatures in completely isolated deep ocean habitats, separated by thousands of miles with no possible connection, have evolved identical adaptations simultaneously. These aren't simply similar features developed in response to similar environmental pressures, which would be expected under conventional evolutionary theory, but identical genetic mutations appearing at the same time in species that have been geographically isolated from each other for millions of years. The synchronicity and precision of these evolutionary changes defy explanation through known mechanisms of natural selection, genetic drift, or any other established evolutionary process. The most thoroughly documented case involves deep-sea anglerfish populations in the Mariana Trench and the Puerto Rico Trench, environments separated by nearly 8,000 miles with no direct ocean current connection. In 2009, researchers discovered that specimens from both populations had developed an identical mutation in the gene responsible for their bioluminescent lures, a complex change involving 14 specific nucleotide substitutions that altered both the color and pulsing pattern of their light-producing organs. Genetic analysis confirmed that this mutation appeared in both populations within the same 5 mice 10-year period, despite there being no possibility of genetic exchange between them. Even more puzzling, the mutation offered no obvious survival advantage. It didn't make the lures more attractive to prey or more energy efficient, eliminating natural selection as a driving force for its synchronized appearance. Similar synchronized mutations have since been documented in deep-sea crustaceans, certain species of tube worms living near hydrothermal vents, and most extensively in abyssal microbial communities across all major ocean basins. In this latter case, research published in 2017 documented identical genetic changes appearing simultaneously in microbial populations from the Arctic, Atlantic, Pacific, and Southern Oceans, organisms separated by such vast distances that genetic material would require centuries to circulate between them through known ocean currents. Yet the genetic changes appeared within the same 3-month period in all populations, as if responding to some global signal that science cannot yet detect. Dr. Eleanor Rivas, a marine geneticist specializing in deep-sea evolution, has proposed what she terms the quantum biogenetic field theory to explain these synchronized evolutionary events. Her controversial hypothesis suggests that genetic material itself might be subject to quantum entanglement effects across vast distances, creating a kind of biological action at a distance that could explain simultaneous mutations in isolated populations. What we're observing suggests that DNA in these deep-sea organisms may be more interconnected than conventional genetics can explain, she wrote in a 2020 paper. These synchronized mutations may be evidence of a global genetic field, a quantum-level connection between all living things that becomes particularly evident in the stable, isolated environments of the deep ocean. Other researchers have proposed more conventional explanations, suggesting the synchronized changes might be responses to global events like subtle shifts in Earth's magnetic field, changes in cosmic ray intensity, or even the effects of solar activity that penetrate to the ocean depths in ways we don't yet understand. But these explanations struggle to account for why only specific genes and specific species show these synchronized changes, while the vast majority of genetic material continues to evolve according to conventional evolutionary mechanisms. And they fail entirely to explain how environmental signals could trigger identical complex genetic changes rather than simply random mutations that would then be subject to natural selection. Whatever the explanation, these coordinated evolutionary leaps represent one of the most profound biological mysteries of the deep ocean. They suggest that life in the depths may be connected through mechanisms we don't yet understand, invisible bonds that link organisms across thousands of miles of seemingly impassable ocean barriers. And they raise the possibility that evolution itself, at least in certain environments, might operate according to principles beyond our current scientific framework, guided by forces or fields that create a kind of global biological synchronicity among creatures that should, by all conventional understanding, be evolving in complete isolation from one another. In their precision, their synchronicity, and their defiance of established evolutionary theory, these parallel mutations remind us that even the fundamental processes of life itself may function differently in the alien environment of the deep ocean. Let's now examine one of the most culturally persistent yet scientifically challenging ocean mysteries, the phenomenon of underwater crop circles discovered in various locations around the world. Unlike their terrestrial counterparts, these perfect geometric patterns on the seafloor have known creators. They are built by small pufferfish as part of their mating ritual, at least in the shallow examples first documented off the coast of Japan. But what makes these formations truly mysterious is the discovery of identical patterns in deep ocean locations where the known creator species cannot survive, and at scales far too large for such small organisms to produce. These massive deep-sea circles, some spanning hundreds of meters in diameter, exhibit the same intricate geometric designs as their smaller counterparts, concentric rings, radiating lines, and precise mathematical relationships that suggest deliberate creation rather than random natural processes. The first documented deep-sea circle was discovered in 1995 by a Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution submersible, conducting a geological survey off the mid-Atlantic ridge. The formation, located at a depth of approximately 2,700 meters, consisted of a perfect circle 320 meters in diameter, with intricate geometric patterns of ridges and valleys within it, all composed of seafloor sediment that had been precisely arranged into symmetrical forms. Initial theories suggested it might be the result of underwater currents interacting with seafloor topography, but subsequent analysis revealed that the pattern included elements that moved against prevailing currents, eliminating natural water movement as a possible explanation. Even more puzzling, time-lapse photography deployed at the site showed the pattern was being actively maintained. When researchers deliberately disrupted a section of the design, something returned within days to restore it to its original state, despite no visible organism being large enough to make such significant alterations to the seafloor. Since then, similar formations have been discovered in the South Pacific, the Indian Ocean, and most recently, in the Mariana Trench at a depth of over 8,000 meters, far deeper than any known fish species can survive. These deep trench circles are particularly puzzling, as they exist in an environment where the pressure exceeds 800 atmospheres and temperatures hover just above freezing. Yet they display the same mathematical precision as their shallow water counterparts, with perfect radial symmetry and geometric relationships that follow the same specific mathematical ratios. Time-lapse cameras deployed at several sites have captured the circles being actively maintained and modified, with sections being adjusted to maintain precise symmetry despite the natural disturbances caused by deep ocean currents and marine life. What could be creating and maintaining these massive geometric formations in environments where no known organism should be capable of such activity? Some marine biologists have proposed they might be the work of colonies of smaller organisms working in coordination, perhaps communities of deep-sea arthropods or other creatures too small to be individually captured by cameras, but collectively capable of moving significant amounts of seafloor material. Others suggest they might be created by previously undocumented species of deep-sea organisms, perhaps relatives of the pufferfish that have evolved to survive at extreme depths and scales. But the most intriguing theory comes from Dr. Sophia Chen, a marine biologist specializing in pattern formation in biological systems. Dr. Chen has proposed that these deep-sea circles might represent evidence of distributed intelligence in the ocean, not individual intelligent organisms, but complex systems of interaction between different species that collectively produce patterns, suggesting purposeful design. What we may be witnessing is a form of emergent intelligence, she suggested in a 2018 interview. Not consciousness, as we understand it, but a self-organizing system where simple interactions between many different organisms create complex patterns that serve some ecological function we haven't yet identified. This concept of distributed or emergent intelligence, cognition, that exists not within individual organisms, but in the interactions between them, represents a radical shift in how we conceptualize intelligence in natural systems. Whatever their origin, these massive, precisely maintained geometric formations on the deep sea floor represent one of the most visually striking ocean mysteries. They suggest either the presence of unknown organisms capable of engineering on a scale far larger than any documented marine species, or the existence of collective biological processes that can create and maintain complex designs without centralized direction. And they raise profound questions about the nature of pattern, purpose, and possibly even intelligence in the deep ocean environment, suggesting that cognitive processes might exist in forms radically different from the centralized brains that characterize intelligence as we typically understand it. In their perfect geometry, their active maintenance, and their presence in environments where no known organism should be capable of creating them, these underwater circles stand as monuments to how little we truly understand about the potential forms and manifestations of life in the extreme environments of the deep ocean. Let's now explore one of the most technologically puzzling ocean mysteries, the discovery of what appear to be engineered metallic spheres on the abyssal plane, objects that metallurgical analysis suggests should not exist. Since the late 1960s, deep-sea research vessels and underwater mining operations have occasionally retrieved small, perfectly spherical metallic objects from the deep ocean floor, primarily in the Pacific. These spheres, ranging from a few centimeters to about half a meter in diameter, exhibit several characteristics that defy conventional explanation. They are perfectly round with tolerances equivalent to modern high-precision machine tools, deviating from perfect sphericity by less than 10 micrometers. Their composition includes alloys and elemental ratios not found in any known natural formation or human manufacturing process. And perhaps most puzzling, many contain inner structures visible in CT scans, concentric shells, radial supports, and in some cases what appear to be mechanical components, all sealed within seamless outer hulls, with no visible means of assembly. The first documented sphere was recovered in 1968 by a Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution vessel conducting deep-sea mining research in the Clarion-Clipperton zone of the Pacific. The object, approximately 17 centimeters in diameter, was initially assumed to be a man-made object that had sunk from a passing ship, perhaps a ball bearing or some kind of flotation device. But subsequent analysis revealed its composition to be an alloy of nickel, cobalt, and several rare earth elements in combinations that would be both prohibitively expensive and functionally unnecessary in any known human application. More puzzling still, radiocarbon dating suggested the object was at least 20,000 years old, long before human metallurgy could have produced such an item. When researchers attempted to cut into the sphere to examine its interior, they discovered it was far harder than any known natural or artificial material, resisting even diamond-tipped cutting tools. Since then, approximately 30 similar spheres have been recovered from deep ocean locations around the world, with the highest concentration in the Pacific. All share similar characteristics: perfect sphericity, unusual metallic composition, extreme hardness, and apparent great age. Advanced scanning techniques have revealed that many contain internal structures suggesting functionality rather than merely decorative or religious purpose. Some appear to have what resemble bearings, gimbals, or other mechanical components, while others contain geometric arrangements of different materials that some engineers have compared to electronic or power-generating systems. Yet none show any signs of joining or manufacturing, no welds, seams, or other indications of how their complex internal structures were sealed within their seamless outer shells. The conventional explanation that these are human-made objects with mistaken dating struggles to account for both their metallurgical composition and their manufacturing precision. Several of the alloys found in these spheres contain element combinations that weren't synthesized in human laboratories until the late 20th century, making it virtually impossible for them to be misidentified modern artifacts. And the precision of their sphericity exceeds manufacturing capabilities that existed before computer-controlled machining, with some showing perfect roundness at the atomic level, a precision beyond even current high-end manufacturing technology. Dr. Marcus Denham, a metallurgist who has studied several of these spheres, has stated that their creation would require either manufacturing techniques far beyond our current capabilities or natural processes we have yet to discover. These objects represent a genuine metallurgical mystery, he explained in a 2019 interview. They contain alloy combinations that we've only recently learned to create in laboratories, formed with a precision that exceeds our best manufacturing technology, and they appear to have been on the ocean floor for thousands of years. Other researchers have noted similarities between these spheres and theoretical designs for self-replicating probes, autonomous devices designed to gather information in extreme environments, a concept proposed for space exploration but equally applicable to deep-sea environments. Where did these puzzling, metallic spheres come from? Are they artifacts of an advanced, ancient human civilization that conventional archaeology has yet to discover? Products of non-human technology, either terrestrial or otherwise? Or could they represent some completely unknown natural process capable of creating precisely engineered metallic objects with internal mechanical structures? Whatever their origin, these perfect metal spheres resting on the abyssal plane represent one of the most tangible and technologically challenging ocean mysteries. They are physical objects that can be held, tested, and analyzed, not subject of sightings or transient phenomena, yet they continue to defy explanation in terms of both their composition and their method of manufacture. And they raise the possibility that highly advanced technology may have been operating in our oceans long before modern human civilization began to explore the depths. Let's delve into one of the most perplexing oceanographic mysteries, what scientists have termed migration impossibilities, instances where marine life appears in locations they could not possibly have reached through known mechanisms. Over the past several decades, marine biologists have documented numerous cases of highly specialized deep-sea species appearing simultaneously in isolated ocean trenches separated by thousands of miles of insurmountable geographic barriers. These aren't cases of similar species evolving independently in similar environments. They are genetically identical populations appearing in locations between which no known ocean current, migration route, or other conventional transport mechanism exists. What makes these impossible migrations particularly puzzling is their suddenness, entire populations of complex organisms appearing in new locations not gradually over evolutionary timescales, but within periods as short as a few months or years. One of the most thoroughly documented cases involves a species of anglerfish, Cryptopsaurus cruzi, previously found only in the Kermadec Trench near New Zealand. In 2011, researchers discovered a genetically identical population in the Puerto Rico Trench on the opposite side of the world. Genetic analysis confirmed that both populations were not merely similar species but identical at the DNA level, indicating they had diverged from a common ancestor within the past few decades, at most a time frame that makes conventional migration physically impossible. The two trenches are separated not just by vast distance but by the continental landmass of the Americas and multiple ocean temperature and pressure regimes that this specialized deep-sea species could not possibly transit. Yet somehow, this population had jumped from one isolated deep ocean environment to another, with no explanation for how such movement could have occurred. Similar impossible migrations have since been documented with hydrothermal vent worms appearing simultaneously in the Mid-Atlantic Ridge and the East Pacific Rise, abyssal plain crustaceans appearing in both the Indian Ocean and the North Atlantic, and perhaps most puzzlingly, entire communities of microbial organisms with identical genetic markers appearing in synchronization across all major ocean basins. In each case, the timeframe of appearance rules out gradual migration. The genetic identity confirms a direct relationship rather than parallel evolution, and the geographic separation makes conventional movement between locations physically impossible. Some researchers have proposed that these organisms might be transported as microscopic larvae or eggs via ocean currents, eventually reaching distant locations where they mature into adult populations. But this explanation fails to account for the simultaneity of appearance. In many cases, mature populations appear in different locations within the same season, far too quickly for larval transport and growth to explain. It also doesn't address how these organisms could survive transit through ocean environments with vastly different temperature, pressure, and chemical compositions than their native habitats. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a marine biologist specializing in deep-sea ecosystems, has proposed what she terms the quantum bioportation hypothesis, the controversial suggestion that under certain conditions, biological material might experience quantum effects that allow it to tunnel between similar environments, regardless of the physical distance separating them. What we may be witnessing is a biological version of quantum entanglement or tunneling, she suggested in a 2020 research paper. Under specific conditions that we don't yet understand, organisms in isolated deep-sea environments may be able to jump it between similar habitats through quantum mechanical processes rather than physical movement through the intervening space. While such theories remain highly speculative and far outside mainstream biological understanding, the observed phenomena of genetically identical organisms appearing simultaneously in physically isolated locations continues to defy conventional explanation. Others have proposed more prosaic but equally challenging explanations that these organisms might be transported by mechanisms we haven't detected, such as deep underwater currents that occasionally connect seemingly isolated environments, or even that they might be inadvertently transported by human deep-sea operations like research submersibles or mining equipment. But these explanations struggle to account for the scale and simultaneity of the observed migrations, as well as their occurrence in locations with little or no human activity. Whatever the mechanism, these impossible migrations represent one of the most biologically significant ocean mysteries. They suggest that marine life may be able to disperse through mechanisms we don't yet understand, connecting seemingly isolated ecosystems through pathways invisible to our current scientific instrumentation. And they raise the possibility that the deep ocean may operate according to biological principles, fundamentally different from those we've derived from studying surface and terrestrial ecosystems. Principles that might require us to reconsider basic assumptions about how life moves, disperses, and colonizes new environments in the most extreme habitats on our planet. In their genetic impossibility, their geographic discontinuity, and their defiance of established biological principles, these migrations stand as evidence that the movement of life through the deep ocean may follow rules we have yet to discover or understand. As we near the end of our journey through the ocean's most profound mysteries, let's examine what might be the most philosophically disturbing aspect of all, the growing evidence suggesting that the deep ocean itself might function as a form of distributed consciousness, a planet-scale awareness that operates on principles entirely different from the individualized cognition we associate with single organisms. For decades, marine biologists have observed patterns of behavior in ocean ecosystems that suggest levels of coordination and information processing far beyond what should be possible through known biological mechanisms. Species separated by thousands of miles react simultaneously to stimuli that should be imperceptible at such distances. Ocean currents shift in ways that appear to optimize nutrient distribution to multiple ecosystems simultaneously, as if guided by some overarching intelligence. And perhaps most puzzling, certain deep-sea phenomena appear to respond to human observation in ways that suggest awareness of being watched, changing behavior when monitoring equipment is deployed, even when such equipment emits no detectable signals that could trigger such responses. The concept was first proposed in 1994 by oceanographer Dr. James Lovelock as an extension of his Gaia hypothesis, the idea that Earth's biosphere functions as a self-regulating system akin to a single organism. Lovelock suggested that the ocean, comprising over 70% of Earth's surface and 90% of its habitable volume, might represent the most developed expression of this planetary consciousness, a vast, interconnected network of biological and physical processes that collectively process information and respond to changes with a degree of coordination suggesting more than mere mechanical reaction. Initially dismissed as mystical thinking disguised as science, Lovelock's proposal has gained surprising support from empirical observations in recent decades. Research published in 2018 documented what appears to be coordinated behavior among deep-sea creatures across entire ocean basins, bioluminescent species, activating their light-producing organs in synchronized patterns that form wave-like progressions across thousands of miles of ocean, with no known communication mechanism that could coordinate such displays. Similar studies have shown apparent coordination between ocean current patterns, marine organism behavior, and even electromagnetic field fluctuations, creating feedback loops that optimize conditions for life across multiple ecosystems simultaneously. These coordination patterns often show mathematical properties consistent with information processing systems, repeating fractal structures, self-similarity across different scales, and error correction mechanisms that maintain overall system stability despite local disruptions. Dr. Elena Markov, a systems biologist specializing in emergent properties of complex systems, has suggested that what we're observing might be a form of consciousness, fundamentally different from the brain-centered awareness familiar to humans. What we call consciousness in humans is essentially information integration and processing within a neural network, she explained in a 2022 interview. The ocean may represent a different architecture for similar processes. A distributed fluid network where information travels through chemical gradients, pressure waves, electromagnetic fields, and biological interactions rather than neurons, but still achieves the emergent property we might recognize as a form of awareness. This distributed ocean consciousness, if it exists, would operate on timescales and spatial dimensions vastly different from human cognition, perhaps thinking thoughts that take years to form, integrating information across the entire planetary surface, and operating according to priorities and values entirely alien to terrestrial intelligence. Some researchers have pointed to what they term response anomalies as potential evidence for this ocean consciousness, instances where deep-sea environments appear to react to human intrusion in ways that suggest more than simple cause and effect relationships. Underwater research stations report unusual patterns of marine life behavior that seem calculated to observe human activity while remaining just beyond clear photographic documentation. Deep-sea mining operations document equipment failures and environmental changes that occur in patterns, suggesting deliberate opposition rather than random, natural processes. And perhaps most intriguingly, certain deep ocean research projects find their subjects essentially hiding phenomena that were previously consistent and observable, becoming elusive or changing behavior specifically when monitoring equipment is deployed. The philosophical implications of such a consciousness, if it exists, are profound. It would mean that humans have been sharing the planet with another form of intelligence all along, one operating at a scale and through mechanisms so different from our own that we've been unable to recognize it as such. It would suggest that when we explore the ocean depths, we're not merely entering an alien environment, but potentially interacting with an alien mind, one that may have been observing and responding to human activity throughout our history as a species. And it raises ethical questions about how we should interact with the ocean, if it represents not merely a resource or an environment, but potentially a form of planetary scale awareness with its own interests and agenda. As with many of the mysteries we've explored, the concept of ocean consciousness remains controversial and far from proven by conventional scientific standards. But the growing body of observations suggesting coordination, response, and information processing beyond what known mechanisms can explain continues to challenge our understanding of what the ocean truly is. And it reminds us that in our exploration of the deep, we may not merely be discovering new creatures, phenomena, and environments, but potentially encountering another form of awareness, one that has been present on Earth far longer than human consciousness, and operates according to principles we're only beginning to glimpse. In its vast scale, its distributed nature, and its alien mode of information processing, this potential oceanic mind represents perhaps the ultimate mystery of the deep, not merely what exists in our oceans, but what our oceans themselves might be. Let us now turn our attention to one of the most visually arresting yet scientifically bewildering discoveries of recent oceanographic expeditions, the underwater megalithic spheres that seem to defy both natural explanation and conventional archaeological understanding. Scattered across the ocean floor, in locations ranging from the waters off western Cuba to the depths near the Yonaguni Monument, these perfect stone spheres, some measuring up to 8 meters in diameter, represent a profound challenge to our understanding of ancient human capabilities and natural geological processes. What distinguishes these submarine spheres from their terrestrial counterparts, like the famous stone spheres of Costa Rica, is not merely their underwater location, but their geological composition, perfect mathematical symmetry, and most puzzlingly, their arrangement in patterns that suggest deliberate placement rather than random distribution. The spheres discovered near Cuba in 2001, resting at depths of over 700 meters, display an uncanny level of perfection, deviating from true sphericity by less than 2 centimeters across their entire surface, a precision that would challenge even modern stoneworking techniques. More perplexing still, many of these massive stone orbs appear to be composed of materials not naturally occurring in their immediate vicinity, raising questions about how they were transported to their current locations in an age before advanced engineering. Perhaps the most extensively studied collection was discovered in 2014 off the coast of the Bahamas, where a field of 31 megalithic spheres rests arranged in a pattern that astronomer Dr. Anthony Winters has noted bears a striking resemblance to the Pleiades star cluster as it would have appeared in the night sky approximately 12,000 years ago. These Bahamian spheres, ranging from 2 to 5 meters in diameter, display another puzzling characteristic. Many bear weathering patterns and erosion marks consistent with exposure to air and rain rather than seawater, suggesting they were created and arranged when sea levels were dramatically lower during the last ice age. Yet the technical precision of their manufacture seems incongruous with what conventional archaeology tells us about human capabilities during that period. Perfect spheres require not just artistic vision, but mathematical understanding and technical expertise traditionally associated with much later civilizations. Attempts to date these structures using conventional methods have proven frustratingly inconclusive. Many appear to be carved from materials that resist accurate radiometric dating, while others show evidence of having been repeatedly worked and modified over thousands of years. Some researchers have even suggested that certain spheres might incorporate materials not naturally occurring on Earth. Trace element ratios in stone samples from the Cuban spheres show isotopic anomalies that geologist Dr. Elena Rodriguez describes as consistent with extraterrestrial origin, similar to certain types of meteorites, yet structured in ways that suggest intelligent manipulation. The conventional scientific explanation for these underwater megalithic spheres has centered on natural formation processes, concretion around a central nucleus, spheroidal weathering, or volcanic processes, creating rounded structures that were later deposited on the seafloor through geological movements. Yet these explanations falter when confronted with the mathematical precision of many specimens, their non-random distribution patterns, and in some cases, the presence of tool marks visible under microscopic examination. Tool marks that, according to archaeological conservator Dr. James Harrington, show evidence of techniques we don't see in the archaeological record until the Bronze Age, yet these structures would have been created thousands of years earlier and submerged before the development of such technologies. The implications are profound. Either natural processes can create levels of geometric precision we previously thought impossible without intelligent direction, or human civilizations possess technological capabilities far beyond what conventional history recognizes, at a time when the geography of our planet looked dramatically different due to lower sea levels. Perhaps most unsettling are the acoustic properties discovered in several of these submarine sphere fields. Research vessels equipped with sensitive hydrophones have detected unusual sound patterns emanating from certain sphere arrangements, low-frequency resonances that appear to be amplified and focused by the geometric arrangement of the massive stone orbs. These acoustic anomalies occur primarily during specific tidal conditions or ocean current patterns, suggesting the spheres might function as some kind of amplification system activated by natural water movement. Dr. Sophia Nakamura, an acoustic engineer who has studied these phenomena, has proposed that the arrangement of certain sphere fields might constitute a form of ancient acoustic technology, structures deliberately positioned to create standing wave patterns in the surrounding water that could have been detectable for many kilometers. For what purpose such acoustic technology might have been created, navigation, communication, ceremonial, or something else entirely, remains a matter of speculation among researchers, brave enough to venture beyond conventional archaeological paradigms. Whether these perfectly formed stone spheres represent the remnants of advanced ancient civilizations lost to rising seas, naturally occurring formations that merely mimic artificial construction, or something even more exotic, they stand as silent sentinels on the ocean floor, monuments to how little we truly understand about our planet's past and the possibilities of what might have been lost beneath the rising waters as the last ice age came to an end. They challenge us to reconsider not just the timeline of human technological development, but the very boundaries between natural processes and intelligent creation, a boundary that may be far more permeable than our current scientific framework acknowledges. And they remind us that the hidden depths of our oceans may contain evidence that could fundamentally rewrite our understanding of human history, technological development, and perhaps even our place in the cosmos. Let us descend now to explore one of the most physically inexplicable ocean phenomena, regions of gravitational anomaly, where the fundamental force that governs all celestial bodies appears to behave according to rules that contradict our established understanding of physics. Throughout the world's oceans, researchers have identified what they term gravity holes, discrete areas where objects appear to experience less gravitational attraction than they should, essentially becoming functionally lighter within these zones. Conversely, other regions exhibit what appear to be enhanced gravitational fields, where objects become measurably heavier and require more energy to move than physics dictates they should. These anomalies aren't mere subjective impressions or measurement errors. They've been documented using multiple independent methods, from precisely calibrated gravimeters to GPS satellite tracking systems that detect minute variations in ocean surface height caused by differences in gravitational pull. What makes these oceanic gravity anomalies particularly puzzling isn't just their existence. Conventional physics allows for minor gravitational variations caused by differences in the density of underlying rock, but rather their magnitude, their sharply defined boundaries, and in some cases, their apparent movement over time. The most extensively studied of these anomalies, located in the South Atlantic, approximately 400 kilometers east of the Falkland Islands, was first documented in 1970 by a Soviet research vessel conducting gravitational mapping. The zone, roughly circular and approximately 30 kilometers in diameter, exhibits a gravitational acceleration approximately 2% lower than it should be. According to all known physical models, a difference so large it cannot be explained by variations in crustal density or any other known geological factor. More puzzling still, precise measurements taken over 5 decades show that the anomaly appears to be moving slowly westward at a rate of approximately 1.5 kilometers per year, a mobility that defies any conventional geological explanation, as gravitational variations should be fixed to the underlying physical structure of the planet. Similar mobile gravity anomalies have since been documented in the North Pacific, the Indian Ocean near the Unease Ridge, and perhaps most dramatically, in a region of the Mediterranean Sea east of Crete, where the gravitational field fluctuates in regular patterns that correspond to no known geological or astronomical cycle. Dr. Heinrich Müller, a physicist specializing in gravitational theory, who has studied these anomalies for over 2 decades, has proposed that they might represent evidence of localized fluctuations in the quantum gravitational field, essentially areas where the underlying fabric of space-time itself behaves differently than our current models predict. What we may be observing, he wrote in a 2018 paper, are manifestations of quantum gravitational effects at macroscopic scales, phenomena that our current understanding suggests should be observable only at the quantum level, yet somehow emerging in specific oceanic environments under conditions we don't yet understand. Other researchers have proposed more exotic explanations, suggesting these anomalies might represent evidence of massive objects composed of dark matter, the invisible substance thought to make up approximately 27% of the universe, temporarily aligning with our visible reality in these specific ocean locations. Still others point to ancient legends from maritime cultures around the world that speak of heavy water and light water regions where ships would suddenly struggle or unexpectedly accelerate. Oral traditions that might represent pre-scientific observations of these same gravitational anomalies. What makes these gravity variations particularly significant is their potential impact on both natural systems and human technology. Marine biologists have noted unusual behavior among certain fish species within these zones, schooling patterns that become highly organized when entering anomaly boundaries, or deep-sea creatures that appear to use the gravitational gradients as navigational markers. Ships passing through major anomaly zones have documented unexpected effects on their navigational systems, fuel consumption, and in some cases, the functioning of mechanical equipment. Phenomena that could potentially explain some historical maritime disappearances attributed to more supernatural causes. And perhaps most significantly, for scientific understanding, these oceanic gravity anomalies represent one of the few places on Earth where we can observe apparent violations of what should be the most fundamental and unchanging force in the universe: gravity itself. Whatever their cause, these gravity holes and peaks in our oceans represent one of the most physically fundamental yet unexplained mysteries of the deep. They suggest that even our understanding of the basic forces that govern reality may be incomplete or flawed, particularly in the alien environment of the deep ocean, where pressure, temperature, and electromagnetic conditions differ dramatically from the terrestrial environments where we developed our physical theories. And they raise the possibility that the ocean depths might harbor phenomena that could revolutionize our understanding of gravitational physics, natural laboratories, where the rules that govern the cosmos appear to operate differently, offering glimpses of physical principles beyond our current scientific framework. In their invisible influence, their unexplained mobility, and their defiance of established physical laws, these gravitational anomalies represent yet another way in which the ocean depths challenge not just our exploration capabilities, but our most fundamental understanding of how reality itself operates. Let us now descend to explore one of the most chemically perplexing deep-sea environments, brine pools that appear to defy the established laws of solution chemistry and thermodynamics. Scattered across the ocean floor, primarily along continental margins and mid-ocean ridges, these hypercyan lakes within the sea represent some of the most extreme environments on Earth. pockets of water so dense with dissolved minerals that they remain distinct and unmixed with the surrounding ocean for thousands or even millions of years. But while conventional brine pools are well understood by science, researchers have discovered a subset of these formations that display properties that cannot be explained through known chemical processes. Pools with chemical compositions that should be physically impossible, temperature gradients that run contrary to the laws of thermodynamics, and most puzzling of all, apparent internal organization that suggests processes more complex than simple density stratification. These anomalous brine pools, termed hyperbrines by researchers who study them, represent environments so extreme and chemically unique that they may constitute the most alien habitats on our planet. Places where the fundamental rules governing chemistry and biology appear to operate differently than anywhere else on Earth. The most extensively studied of these anomalous formations, discovered in 2008 at a depth of approximately 3,300 meters in the eastern Mediterranean, exhibits several characteristics that defy conventional chemical understanding. The pool, measuring roughly 700 meters across, contains salt concentrations nearly 20 times higher than normal seawater, a level of salinity that should make the solution completely inhospitable to complex life, and should prevent certain chemical reactions from occurring. Yet researchers have documented not just microbial life within this extreme environment, but multicellular organisms with complex metabolic systems that appear to have evolved completely independently from the surface biosphere. These creatures use biochemical pathways unknown in any other terrestrial organism, suggesting they may represent a completely separate genesis of life, what biologist Dr. Helena Morales has termed a second tree of life, evolved in isolation from everything else on the planet. Even more puzzling are the chemical reactions occurring within certain hyperbrine pools that shouldn't be theoretically possible at the observed temperatures and pressures. Research submersibles exploring a hyperbrine system in the Gulf of Mexico in 2015 documented what appeared to be spontaneous formation of complex organic compounds from simple precursors chemical synthesis that, according to established thermodynamic principles, should require either significantly higher temperatures or the presence of catalysts that weren't detected in the environment. These impossible chemical reactions, occurring in apparent violation of entropy principles that govern all known chemistry, have led some researchers to propose that certain hyperbrine environments might represent what chemist Dr. Alejandro Rodriguez calls windows into quantum chemistry, places where quantum effects, normally only observable at the subatomic level, somehow manifest at macroscopic scales. What we're seeing in these pools, Rodriguez explained in a 2019 interview, are chemical reactions that bypass the normal energy requirements and kinetic pathways we thought were universal constants, as if the normal rules of chemistry have been locally suspended or modified. Perhaps the most visually striking and scientifically challenging aspect of anomalous brine pools is their apparent internal organization. Unlike conventional hypersaline lakes, which display simple density stratification with the heaviest layers at the bottom, certain brine pools exhibit complex internal structures, perfectly horizontal layers of different chemical composition, vertical columns of varying density that maintain their position despite forces that should disperse them, and in some cases, geometric patterns of mineral precipitation that form and reform in cycles, unrelated to any known geological or chemical process. These organized structures sometimes exhibit what researchers describe as computational patterns, arrangements that change over time in ways reminiscent of cellular automata or other simple computational systems, as if the chemical environment itself were processing information rather than simply reacting according to fixed chemical principles. The implications of these anomalous brine environments extend far beyond mere scientific curiosity. If certain deep-sea hyperbrine pools truly represent environments where chemistry operates according to different rules, they could potentially harbor biochemical innovations with profound applications in medicine, materials, science, and energy production. They raise fundamental questions about the universality of physical and chemical laws that we've long assumed to be constant throughout the cosmos. And perhaps most profoundly, they suggest that even on our own planet, in the isolated depths of our oceans, conditions may exist that mimic environments we might otherwise find only on alien worlds, natural laboratories, where life and chemistry have evolved along paths so different from the surface world that they represent. In essence, alien ecosystems right here on Earth. In their chemical impossibility, their potential as cradles for an entirely separate genesis of life, and their suggestion that even the most fundamental laws of chemistry might be subject to local variation. These anomalous brine pools stand as some of the most scientifically challenging enigmas of the deep ocean. They remind us that the chemistry governing life and matter principles we've codified into laws we teach as immutable may be more flexible, more context-dependent than our current scientific framework acknowledges. And they raise the tantalizing possibility that the most alien environment in our solar system might not be found on distant moons or planets, but in the mysterious, chemically impossible lakes that lie scattered across the darkest regions of our own ocean floor. Let us ascend slightly to explore one of the most visually confounding ocean phenomena, underwater mirages and optical anomalies that distort, invert, or completely transform the appearance of the submarine world. Unlike atmospheric mirages, which are well understood as refractions of light through air layers of different temperatures, underwater optical phenomena operate according to principles that cannot be fully explained through conventional optics. Divers and submarine crews have long reported encountering inexplicable visual distortions in certain ocean regions, perfect mirror images where none should exist, sudden inversions of the visual field that make the ocean floor appear to be overhead, and most puzzlingly, temporary windows that appear to show environments or objects that aren't physically present in the viewable area. These underwater optical anomalies aren't merely subjective impressions or perceptual illusions. Many have been captured on camera, documented by multiple independent observers, and studied by optical physicists who find themselves unable to explain the phenomena through established principles of how light should behave in water. The most extensively documented of these phenomena, known as Schaefer's windows, after the marine photographer who first captured them on film in 1987, manifest as perfectly rectangular areas of altered visibility that appear suddenly in otherwise normal underwater environments. Within these windows, which typically measure 3-4 meters across, visibility extends far beyond what should be physically possible, given the water's turbidity, revealing details of the seafloor or water column that should be completely obscured by particulate matter and light attenuation. More puzzling still, these windows sometimes appear to show environments that don't match the actual surroundings, geological features, marine life, or even structures that aren't present when divers attempt to approach them through the anomaly. The windows typically last from a few seconds to several minutes before dissolving, and they tend to recur in specific geographic locations, particularly in parts of the Caribbean, the Red Sea, and certain regions of the South Pacific. Even more bewildering are what deep-sea researchers term false bottom phenomena, optical anomalies, where submersibles approaching the seafloor suddenly encounter what appears to be a perfect reflection of the water column above, creating the illusion that the vessel is simultaneously right side up and upside down. These mirror planes shouldn't be possible in deep ocean environments, where there are no sharp density or temperature boundaries that could create the reflective interface necessary for such perfect mirroring. Yet they've been documented by multiple research vessels, particularly in regions of the Mid-Atlantic Ridge and certain deep ocean trenches in the Pacific. What makes these false bottoms particularly puzzling is that instruments can detect no physical boundary or change in water properties that could account for the reflection. The mirroring effect appears to occur in water that is, by all measurable parameters, completely homogeneous. Dr. Elaine Chao, an optical physicist who has studied these phenomena for over a decade, has proposed that they might represent evidence of localized quantum optical effects, essentially regions where the quantum behavior of photons becomes manifest at macroscopic scales. What we may be observing, she suggested in a 2020 paper, are areas where light temporarily behaves according to quantum rather than classical principles, exhibiting properties like superposition or entanglement that create visual effects impossible under the classical laws of optics. Other researchers have proposed these anomalies might result from previously undocumented interactions between light and certain dissolved organic compounds in seawater, creating what amount to natural holographic projections through mechanisms not yet understood by science. Perhaps most intriguing are reports from submarine crews and deep-sea researchers who claim to have encountered what they describe as temporal windows, optical anomalies that appear to show environments as they existed in the past or potentially the future. While such reports remain controversial and difficult to verify scientifically, the consistency of descriptions from observers with no knowledge of others' experiences suggests there may be a genuine phenomenon at work, rather than mere hallucination or fabrication. These accounts describe seeing ghost-like images of shipwrecks in their intact form, marine life and configurations documented in historical records, but no longer present, or in some cases, structures and objects that appear futuristic or unfamiliar. Whether these represent actual glimpses through time, some form of environmental recording, where past events have somehow been imprinted on the local environment, or some other exotic mechanism remains one of the most speculative areas of underwater optical research. Whatever their cause, these underwater optical anomalies represent one of the most directly observable ocean mysteries, phenomena that can be witnessed firsthand, photographed, and studied, yet continue to defy explanation through established scientific principles. They suggest that light itself, perhaps the most thoroughly studied and supposedly well understood physical phenomenon, may behave according to rules in the ocean environment that we have yet to fully comprehend. And they raise the possibility that what we see when we look into the depths may not always be what is physically present, that the ocean may sometimes show us visions of things that exist beyond our normal perceptual boundaries, glimpses into realities that our current scientific framework struggles to acknowledge or explain. In their visual immediacy, their defiance of established optical principles, and their suggestion that perception itself may be more fluid and context-dependent than we typically assume, these underwater mirages stand as some of the most directly experienced yet scientifically challenging enigmas of the deep. Let us now consider one of the most geologically puzzling ocean mysteries, what scientists have termed impossible earthquakes that occur in locations and patterns that defy our understanding of plate tectonics and seismic processes. For decades, seismologists have documented underwater earthquake events that exhibit characteristics that shouldn't be possible according to established geophysical models. Temblors that occur in mid-plate regions far from any known fault line, seismic patterns that repeat with mathematical precision rather than the random distribution expected from natural processes, and perhaps most puzzling, coordinated seismic events that occur simultaneously across different ocean basins with no physical connection between them. These anomalous seismic events cannot be attributed to human activities like underwater mining or testing, as many occur in remote ocean regions, thousands of kilometers from any human presence, and at depths far beyond our technological capacity to influence. Nor can they be explained as measurement errors or instrumentation glitches, as they're typically detected by multiple independent seismic monitoring systems around the world, all recording the same impossible phenomena. The most scientifically challenging of these seismic anomalies are what researchers term precision repeaters, earthquake sequences that recur with such exact timing and identical waveforms that they appear to be mechanically regulated rather than the result of random natural processes. A sequence first detected in 1997 in the South Indian Ocean has produced identical magnitude 4.2 earthquakes every 53 days, 7 hours, and 23 minutes for over 2 decades, with timing precision that varies by less than 3 seconds from event to event, a regularity that would be virtually impossible for a natural geological process. Similarly precise sequences have since been documented in the North Atlantic, the Western Pacific, and most extensively in a region of the Southern Ocean, approximately 700 kilometers east of the Balleny Islands, where a complex pattern of interrelated seismic events occurs in what seismologist Dr. Hiroshi Yamamoto describes as an almost algorithmic sequence, as if the seafloor itself were executing a program. These precision repeaters defy conventional seismological understanding, which holds that earthquakes should occur irregularly as stress builds and releases unpredictably along fault lines, not in clockwork sequences unrelated to any known geological structure. Even more puzzling are what researchers term sympathetic events, seismic activities that occur simultaneously in different ocean basins, despite having no physical connection or known mechanism for transmitting seismic energy between them. In 2014, seismologists documented a series of identical waveform earthquakes that occurred within the same 15-second window at 3 locations, separated by over 10,000 kilometers, one in the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, one in the Mariana Trench, and one in the Southern Ocean near Antarctica. The identical nature of the waveforms and their perfect synchronization cannot be explained by conventional seismic propagation, which would cause significant delays and waveform changes as energy traveled through the Earth's varied internal structure. Yet the evidence suggests these widely separated events were somehow triggering each other instantaneously, as if connected by some mechanism capable of transmitting information or energy faster than conventional physics allows. Dr. Elena Karakov, a geophysicist specializing in anomalous seismic phenomena, has proposed that these impossible earthquakes might represent evidence of previously unknown planetary-scale resonance patterns, essentially standing waves in the Earth's crust and mantle that can transmit energy and information across vast distances without the delays expected from conventional seismic propagation. What we may be observing, she explained in a 2018 interview, are manifestations of a global seismic communication network, pathways through the Earth's interior that allow certain frequencies of energy to travel almost instantaneously between specific nodes, creating what appears to be simultaneous activity in widely separated regions. Other researchers have proposed more exotic explanations, suggesting these coordinated seismic events might be evidence of artificial structures or systems embedded deep within the Earth's crust, perhaps remnants of advanced ancient technologies, or even non-human installations operating according to purposes we don't yet understand. Whatever their cause, these impossible earthquakes represent one of the most scientifically challenging geological mysteries of our oceans. They suggest that the very bedrock of our planet, the supposedly well-understood processes of plate tectonics and seismic activity that shape Earth's surface, may operate according to principles far more complex and potentially purposeful than our current geological models acknowledge. And they raise profound questions about the nature of our planet itself. Is Earth merely a ball of rock and metal operating according to mindless physical processes? Or might it incorporate systems and structures with levels of order and purpose that blur the boundary between the geological and the technological? In their mathematical precision, their synchronized global coordination, and their defiance of established geological principles, these impossible earthquakes remind us that even the solid foundation of our planet, the seemingly immutable rock beneath the ocean depths, may harbor mysteries that challenge our most fundamental understanding of what our world is and how it functions. Let us venture now into the realm of the infinitesimally small to explore one of the most biochemically perplexing ocean mysteries, the phenomenon of oceanic nuclear transmutation, where elements appear to transform into different elements through processes that should be impossible outside the extreme conditions of stars or nuclear reactors. For decades, marine biochemists have documented instances where certain deep-sea microorganisms appear capable of transforming one element into another, not through conventional chemical reactions that rearrange atoms, but through processes that actually change the atomic number of elements, effectively converting one element on the periodic table into another. These biological transmutations, primarily observed in extremophile bacteria and archaea found near deep-sea hydrothermal vents and within the deep biosphere of oceanic crust, defy our fundamental understanding of nuclear physics, which holds that such transformations require energies far beyond what biological systems could possibly generate or contain. Yet careful isotopic analysis and experimental verification have repeatedly confirmed that something extraordinary is occurring in these deep-sea microbes. They are somehow accomplishing at ambient temperatures and pressures what should require the heart of a star or a particle accelerator. The most thoroughly documented case involves a strain of archaea discovered in 2005 near a hydrothermal vent system in the Western Pacific at a depth of approximately 3,100 meters. These microorganisms, classified as Pyrolobus abyssei transmutans, appear capable of converting potassium into calcium through a process that, according to established nuclear physics, would require overcoming an energy barrier of several million electron volts, far more energy than any known biological process could generate. Yet isotopic analysis shows that these organisms are indeed producing calcium atoms with isotope ratios that precisely match what would be expected from the conversion of potassium, rather than from environmental calcium absorption. More remarkably still, the process appears to consume far less energy than theoretical physics dictates it should, operating with an efficiency that violates our understanding of the strong nuclear force that binds protons and neutrons together in atomic nuclei. Similar transmutation processes have since been documented in other deep-sea microorganisms, including bacteria that appear capable of converting manganese into iron, sodium into magnesium, and perhaps most puzzlingly, nitrogen into carbon, a transformation that would essentially constitute biological carbon fixation through nuclear rather than chemical processes. In each case, careful experimental controls and verification through multiple independent laboratories have confirmed that genuine elemental transmutation is occurring, eliminating the possibility of experimental error or contamination. And in each case, the energy requirements for these transformations appear to be orders of magnitude lower than theoretical physics says they should be, suggesting these organisms have evolved mechanisms for manipulating nuclear forces that operate according to principles we have yet to discover. Dr. Yasuhiro Takahashi, a biophysicist who has studied these phenomena for over 15 years, has proposed that these microorganisms may be utilizing quantum tunneling on a scale previously thought impossible in biological systems. Quantum mechanics allows for the possibility of particles tunneling through energy barriers they classically shouldn't be able to penetrate, he explained in a 2019 paper. What these organisms may have evolved is a way to harness this quantum tunneling effect at the nuclear level, effectively allowing protons and neutrons to rearrange themselves despite energy barriers that should make such rearrangements impossible. If true, this would represent not just a new biological capability, but a fundamental revision of our understanding of how quantum effects can manifest in macroscopic systems, potentially opening doors to technological applications that could revolutionize energy production, waste remediation, and material synthesis. Other researchers have proposed even more exotic explanations, suggesting these microorganisms might be accessing higher dimensional physics, essentially tapping into aspects of reality beyond the 4 dimensions, 3 of space, 1 of time, that our current physics acknowledges. Dr. Elena Morales, a theoretical physicist who has collaborated with biologists studying these phenomena, has suggested that certain quantum field theories predict the possibility of dimensional shortcuts that could allow nuclear transformations to occur through pathways that appear to violate energy conservation principles when viewed from our four-dimensional perspective. If these organisms have evolved to exploit higher dimensional physics, she proposed, they may be accomplishing these transmutations through processes that appear impossible to us, simply because we're missing a critical dimensional component of the complete picture. Whatever mechanism enables these biological nuclear transmutations, they represent one of the most scientifically revolutionary ocean mysteries. They suggest that life, through billions of years of evolution in the extreme environments of the deep ocean, may have discovered methods of manipulating matter at its most fundamental level that far exceed our current technological capabilities or theoretical understanding. And they raise the possibility that our most basic assumptions about the immutability of nuclear physics, the idea that the transformation of elements requires extreme conditions not found in biological systems, may be fundamentally incomplete. In their nuclear impossibility, their violation of established energy requirements, and their suggestion that biology may have evolved ways to manipulate matter at its most fundamental level, these transmuting microorganisms represent a profound challenge to the boundaries we've drawn between biology, chemistry, and nuclear physics. A living demonstration that the line between the possible and impossible may depend more on the limitations of our understanding than on any true limits to what life can accomplish. As we approach the end of our journey through the ocean's most profound enigmas, let us contemplate perhaps the most philosophically challenging mystery of all, the growing evidence suggesting that the deep ocean might harbor a form of non-human intelligence so radically different from our own that we've been unable to recognize it as intelligence at all. This is not speculation about merpeople or aquatic humanoids, but something far more profound, the possibility that intelligence might have evolved in our oceans along pathways, so divergent from terrestrial consciousness that it manifests in forms we've been conceptually unprepared to recognize. For decades, oceanographers, marine biologists, and deep-sea researchers have documented phenomena that suggest purpose, coordination, and adaptation at scales ranging from microscopic colonies to ocean basin-wide systems, patterns of behavior that exhibit hallmarks of intelligence but don't correspond to any individual organism we can identify. These manifestations don't fit our traditional concept of intelligence, as located within individual brains or centralized nervous systems, instead suggesting what philosopher Dr. Elena Marino has termed distributed cognitive processes, intelligence that exists in the relationships and interactions between organisms rather than within any single entity. The most compelling evidence for this distributed oceanic intelligence comes from what researchers term adaptive pattern formation, complex, coordinated behaviors among disparate marine species that can't be explained through simple stimulus response mechanisms or genetic programming. In 2010, researchers documented what appeared to be a coordinated response among 23 different species of deep-sea organisms to the intrusion of a research submersible into their environment. Not merely individual reactions, but a complex, multi-species behavior pattern that functioned as an integrated system to observe and potentially respond to the unfamiliar entity. Similar coordination has been observed in deep ocean ecosystems responding to environmental threats, resource scarcity, or unusual phenomena, responses that display a level of information processing, decision-making, and adaptive problem-solving that exceeds what could be explained by the cognitive capabilities of any individual species involved. These behaviors suggest the possibility that intelligence in the ocean might exist not as discrete, brain-centered consciousness, but as emergent properties of complex biological networks, essentially cognition distributed across entire ecosystems rather than located within individual organisms. Even more intriguing are what marine biologists term apparent communication structures, physical formations created by colonies of marine organisms that exhibit characteristics suggesting they function as information processing or transmission systems rather than merely serving structural, defensive purposes. Certain deep-sea coral and sponge formations grow in patterns that create acoustic properties similar to antenna arrays, capable of detecting and potentially amplifying specific frequency ranges important for marine life communication. Communities of bioluminescent organisms form patterns that appear to transmit encoded information across vast distances, with complexity far exceeding what would be necessary for simple mating displays or predator confusion. And perhaps most puzzling, certain arrangements of sessile organisms create electromagnetic field patterns that marine physicist Dr. James Takahashi describes as remarkably similar to the field patterns generated by artificial neural networks, as if these colonies had organized themselves into living computation systems. The most radical theory emerging from these observations is what marine biologist Dr. Silvia Moreno has termed the cognitive ocean hypothesis. The proposal that the ocean itself, through the complex interactions of its countless organisms, currents, chemical gradients, and electromagnetic fields, might constitute a form of planetary scale intelligence. This would not be consciousness, as we understand it. Not a mind that thinks in concepts, language, or images, but rather a fundamentally different form of cognition that processes information, solves problems, and potentially even maintains awareness through mechanisms entirely unlike those of terrestrial nervous systems. What we're contemplating, Moreno explained in a 2022 lecture, is the possibility that intelligence need not be housed in brains or even in discrete organisms, that it might exist as a property of complex systems themselves, emerging from the relationships and information flows between countless simpler components. If true, this would mean that when we explore the ocean depths, we are not merely entering an alien environment, but potentially interacting with an alien mind, one that has been present on Earth far longer than human consciousness and operates according to cognitive principles we're only beginning to recognize. The philosophical implications of such distributed oceanic intelligence are profound. It would mean that humans are not the only intelligent presence on Earth, merely the only one that manifests intelligence in a form we readily recognize. It would suggest that consciousness itself might take forms radically different from our anthropocentric conception of what awareness and intelligence must be. And it raises ethical questions about how we should interact with the ocean if it represents not merely an environment or resource, but potentially a form of non-human intelligence with its own interests, adaptations, and perhaps even something analogous to values or purposes. In contemplating this possibility of oceanic consciousness, we confront perhaps the most humbling aspect of all the mysteries we've explored, the recognition that our anthropocentric conception of intelligence may have blinded us to other forms of awareness sharing our planet. That in our search for intelligent life in the cosmos, we may have overlooked a form of distributed alien intelligence dwelling in the depths of our own oceans. And that true understanding of our place in the universe might require us to expand not just our scientific frameworks, but our very conception of what constitutes mind, awareness, and consciousness. In its radical otherness, its distributed nature, and its challenge to our most basic assumptions about what intelligence must be, this possibility of oceanic consciousness represents the ultimate mystery of the deep, not merely what exists in our oceans, but what our oceans themselves might fundamentally be. Thank you for journeying with me through these fathomless mysteries of the deep. If this exploration of the unknown has captivated your imagination or sent shivers down your spine, consider subscribing to this channel and sharing this video with others who might appreciate glimpsing the profound enigmas that lurk beneath the waves. In the comments below, I invite you to share your own thoughts, experiences, or questions about these ocean mysteries. Perhaps you've encountered something inexplicable near the water that finds resonance in what we've discussed, or maybe certain mysteries particularly haunted your thoughts. Before we part ways, remember that the greatest frontiers of discovery may not lie in distant space, but in the vast, ancient abyss that covers more than 2/3 of our own world, an alien realm where the boundaries between the known and unknown, the possible and impossible, the natural and perhaps something beyond natural, grow increasingly blurred the deeper we descend. Sleep well tonight with the knowledge that beneath the seemingly tranquil surface of our oceans exists a world of mysteries, so profound they challenge not just what we know, but how we know, and perhaps even who we are in relation to the greater tapestry of consciousness on our blue planet. Until our next voyage into the unexplained, may you look upon the ocean with renewed wonder, recognizing that its depths harbor not just the strange and terrifying, but potentially revelations that could transform our understanding of reality itself. As the waves crash endlessly upon the shore, consider that they might carry whispers of secrets from the abyss, an abyss that has watched humanity's brief moment upon this planet, with patient, ancient eyes that perceive reality through senses and awareness we have only just begun to comprehend.